Dawn broke over the rugged Montana mountains, painting the sky in hues of amber and gold. The small town of Pine Ridge nestled in the valley below, still slumbering as the first rays of sunlight kissed the weathered storefronts along Main Street. The air carried the crisp scent of pine and the promise of another peaceful day. Maya Reynolds stood on her porch, steam rising from the coffee mug clutched between her slender fingers. At 37, she carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who had seen more of the world than most. Her dark hair, pulled back in a practical ponytail, framed a face that turned heads even when she wasn't trying. High cheekbones, intelligent hazel eyes, and a smile that appeared genuine but never quite reached those eyes, not completely. She gazed at the mountains as they caught fire with the morning light. 5 years in Pine Ridge, and the view still stole her breath. 5 years of building a life far removed from her past. 5 years of something approaching peace. The phone in her pocket buzzed. Maya checked the screen and nodded to herself. Mrs. Holloway's medication needed delivery before breakfast. The old woman's arthritis made the 3-mile drive into town nearly impossible on bad days. Maya drained her coffee, set the mug on the porch railing, and headed inside to prepare for her first delivery of the day. Her small cabin sat a quarter-mile from the nearest neighbor, just how she liked it. The interior was Spartan, but comfortable hand-woven rugs over hardwood floors, bookshelves lined with history, and thrillers, a worn leather couch facing a stone fireplace. Nothing that couldn't be abandoned within an hour if necessary. Old habits. Maya moved through her morning routine with practiced efficiency. Feed the cat, check the news, secure the windows. Her hand lingered momentarily on a framed photograph, a younger version of herself, in a formal navy suit, flanked by 3 serious-looking men in similar attire. She turned the frame face down as she did every morning. In her bedroom, she slid open the closet door and knelt, fingers finding the hidden latch beneath the floorboard. The compartment below contained a small safe. She paused, hand hovering over the keypad, then shook her head and closed the hiding place. Not today. Hopefully, never again. The leather messenger bag by the door contained her daily essentials: phone wallet, pocket knife, pepper spray, and a first aid kit, more comprehensive than most emergency rooms. Maya slung it across her body and grabbed her motorcycle keys from the hook. Outside, her pride and joy waited a meticulously maintained BMW R1250 GS adventure motorcycle. Not the most practical delivery vehicle for most, but perfect for navigating the winding mountain roads and occasional off-road shortcut. The panniers on either side bore the hand-painted logo of Mountain Fresh Delivery, her lifeline to the community, and her cover for knowing every inch of the surrounding 50 miles. The engine roared to life, a comforting rumble that resonated in her chest. Maya secured her helmet, checked her delivery schedule on her phone one last time, and set off down the gravel driveway toward town. Pine Ridge emerged from the morning mist as she approached a picturesque Main Street flanked by buildings that hadn't changed much since the 1950s. The Mountain Brew coffee shop, Hendrix's Hardware. The sheriff's office, with its American flag snapping in the breeze. And Doc Miller's pharmacy, where she would pick up Mrs. Holloway's prescription. Sheriff Tom Anderson waved from the sidewalk as she passed. At 65, with a face weathered by sun and snow, he was the closest thing to a father figure Maya had allowed herself in years. He'd been the first to welcome her to town, never asking too many questions about her past, perhaps recognizing in her the same wariness he'd brought home from Vietnam decades ago. "Morning, Sheriff," Maya called over the engine's purr. "Busy day ahead?" he asked, tipping his hat. "Aren't they all?" She smiled, the practiced warmth never quite reaching her eyes. Anderson nodded, a knowing look passing between them. "Keep your eyes open out there. Been hearing about some outsiders passing through." Maya's smile didn't falter, but something cold and alert awakened in her chest. Tourists. Not the kind that spend money. The sheriff's weathered face hardened. Just a feeling, probably nothing. But in Maya's experience, Tom Anderson's feelings were rarely wrong. She nodded, suddenly aware of the weight of her knife in her pocket. "I'll keep an eye out." She parked in front of Miller's pharmacy, the bell above the door announcing her arrival. Doc Miller, bald head gleaming under the fluorescent lights, looked up from his computer. "Right on time as always, Maya." He reached beneath the counter and produced a white paper bag. "Mrs. Holloway's arthritis meds, plus the calcium supplements she keeps forgetting to ask for." Maya smiled, genuine this time. "You're a good man, Doc." "Just doing my job." He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "How's she really doing up there, all alone? Stubborn as ever. Refuses to consider the assisted living facility in Kalispell." Maya tucked the medication into her bag. "I check on her every day. She's still sharp as a tack, just the body failing her." Doc Miller nodded, satisfied. "That woman survived the loss of 2 husbands and a son. Mountain winter won't take her easily." The bell chimed again as Maya turned to leave. A man she didn't recognize entered, unusual in a town this size, where faces became familiar within days. Tall, lean, with a military straight posture and watchful eyes that scanned the room in a pattern Maya recognized immediately. Threat assessment. 3 points of exit. Potential weapons. Witnesses. Their eyes met briefly, and Maya felt a jolt of recognition, not of the man, but of what he were. The stranger nodded politely and moved toward the counter. Maya forced herself to walk unhurried to the door, every nerve suddenly alert. Outside, she secured the medication in her pannier and swung her leg over the motorcycle seat. From the corner of her eye, she noticed a glossy black Dodge Ram with tinted windows parked across the street, new, expensive, with Montana plates that didn't match the typical local patterns. She memorized the plate number instinctively while pretending to check her delivery schedule. The truck didn't belong in Pine Ridge, and neither did the man in the pharmacy. After 5 years of quiet, Maya recognized the ripples of something approaching, something she had hoped to leave behind. Mrs. Holloway's cabin, perched on a ridge overlooking a valley where elk still grazed at dawn and dusk. The dirt road leading to it challenged even Maya's motorcycle skills, winding through pine forests and across a small stream before emerging into a clearing where the old woman's home stood defiant against the wilderness. Maya cut the engine and listened. The Montana silence was different from city silence, alive with the rustle of pine needles, distant bird calls, the occasional snap of branches as wildlife moved through the underbrush. Nothing out of place. No vehicles had passed this way recently. The dirt remained undisturbed, save for deer tracks. The cabin door opened before she reached it. Eleanor Holloway stood in the doorway, leaning on her walker, but straight-backed and dignified in a flannel shirt and jeans that hung loose on her diminished frame. At 83, her face mapped a lifetime of Montana winters, but her blue eyes remained sharp and evaluating. "You're later than usual," she observed, moving aside to let Maya enter. "Had to wait for the pharmacy to open." Maya produced the medication bag. "Doc added your calcium supplements. That man fusses worse than my late husband." Mrs. Holloway gestured toward the kitchen. "Coffee's fresh. You look like you need it." Maya followed her inside automatically, noting exit points, lines of sight from the window's potential defensive positions. The habit was so ingrained, she barely noticed doing it anymore. "Something troubling you?" Mrs. Holloway eased herself into her recliner, those piercing blue eyes missing nothing. Maya poured coffee into a chipped mug bearing a faded Yellowstone National Park logo. "New faces in town. Probably nothing. You don't believe that any more than I do. The old woman snorted. I wasn't born yesterday. This was why Maya felt drawn to Eleanor Holloway beyond her professional responsibility. The woman had survived 83 years in these mountains by seeing what others missed. She never pushed for Maya's secrets, but she recognized their weight. Just staying alert. Maya sipped the strong black coffee. Sheriff mentioned outsiders passing through. This time of year, Mrs. Holloway shook her head. Tourist season's over. Hunters would be up in the North Ranges. She fixed Maya with a knowing look. You get that same expression my Henry had when he came back from Korea. Seeing ghosts around corners. Maya smiled tightly. Occupational hazard of living alone. That what you call it? The old woman's voice softened. You're running from something, girl. Have been since you showed up here. None of my business what but these mountains have sheltered plenty of folks looking for a fresh start. For a moment, Maya considered telling her everything about the badge she'd surrendered, the cases that still haunted her sleep, the network of enemies she'd made in her former life. Instead, she checked her watch. Need anything from town before I make my other deliveries? Mrs. Holloway accepted the deflection with grace. I'm running low on that tea you brought last month. The mint one. I'll bring some tomorrow. Maya rinsed her mug in the sink. You'll call if you need anything before then. I managed just fine before you showed up with your fancy delivery service. The old woman's eyes twinkled. But I'll call. On the porch, Maya paused. Lock your door, Mrs. Holloway, just as a precaution. Something in her tone must have conveyed the seriousness, because the old woman nodded without argument. Been keeping a shotgun by my bed since 1964, dear. Some habits don't fade. Maya's route took her deep into the surrounding valleys and ridges to remote cabins and small clusters of homes where residents relied on her deliveries for everything from medications to specialty foods. By mid-afternoon, she had covered nearly 70 miles of mountain roads. Her final delivery was to the Williams family, a young couple with twin boys who had moved from Seattle 2 years ago to reconnect with nature. They operated a successful online business from their sprawling log home on the outskirts of Pine Ridge, where cell service remained spotty at best. Maya approached their long driveway with caution. Something felt wrong. The family's SUV sat in its usual spot, but the front door stood ajar, unusual for Montana, where wildlife wanderings made closed doors a necessity rather than a preference. She parked her motorcycle and removed her helmet, senses heightened. Hello, Jack, Emma. It's Maya with your delivery. No response, just the whisper of wind through the pines. Maya unzipped her jacket slightly, allowing easier access to the knife in her inner pocket. She approached the house slowly, eyes scanning the property. No signs of struggle, no unfamiliar vehicles. Just that open door swinging gently in the breeze. Jack, you home. The sound of breaking glass from inside spurred her forward. Maya moved swiftly to the porch, flattening herself against the wall beside the door. Years of training took over as she listened intently. Footsteps. A muffled curse. Someone moving through the house who wasn't supposed to be there. She had choices. Call the sheriff and wait at least 30 minutes before help would arrive. Leave and pretend she saw nothing. Or handle it herself. Maya took a deep breath and slipped inside. The entryway opened to a great room with vaulted ceilings and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the mountains. Everything seemed in place except for a shattered vase on the hardwood floor near the kitchen island. Water and daffodils spread across the polished surface. A shadow moved in the hallway leading to the bedrooms. Maya pressed herself against the wall, cursing her decision to leave her gun locked away all these years. The knife would have to do if it came to that. The intruder emerged tall-bearded, wearing a leather jacket adorned with patches she couldn't make out from this angle. He carried a laptop under one arm, clearly stolen from the Williams' home office. He hadn't seen her yet. Maya calculated her options in fractions of seconds. The man outweighed her by at least 70 pounds. He might be armed. Direct confrontation was risky. She deliberately stepped on a shard of broken vase, the crack under her boot deafening in the silence. The man whirled, startled. Young mid-20s maybe, with a scraggly beard, and eyes widened in surprise. Not a professional. His hand moved toward his waistband. "Police are on their way," Maya lied calmly. "You've got about 2 minutes to disappear into those woods without the laptop." The young man hesitated, assessing her, a woman alone, 5'7" in motorcycle boots. Seemingly no threat. A dangerous smile spread across his face. "No cops coming way out here that fast, lady." He pulled a hunting knife from a sheath at his belt. "And no witnesses to say I was ever here." Maya sighed. She'd given him a chance. "Last warning," she said, her voice dropping an octave. "Put down the laptop and walk away." He lunged forward, knife extended, confidence in every line of his body, the confidence of a predator who had never faced a more dangerous hunter. Maya sidestepped with fluid grace, using his momentum against him. Her hand caught his wrist, applying precise pressure to the nerve bundle. The hunting knife clattered to the floor. Before he could register what had happened, she twisted his arm behind his back at an unnatural angle, forcing him to his knees with a technique honed through years of FBI hand-to-hand combat training. "Jesus! What the—" he gasped, pain cutting off his words. "That laptop doesn't belong to you," Maya said conversationally, maintaining the joint lock with minimal effort. "Neither does anything else in this house." "Let me go, you crazy bitch!" he struggled, only increasing his own pain. "Here's what's going to happen," Maya continued, her voice eerily calm. "You're going to tell me who you are and why you're robbing this specific house in the middle of nowhere. Then you're going to leave and never come back to Pine Ridge. Because if you do—" she applied slightly more pressure, drawing a yelp of pain. "Well, let's just say I won't be this gentle next time." The young man's bravado crumbled. It was just supposed to be a quick job. They said these tech people from the city would have cash electronics, easy pickings. Maya's grip tightened. "Who told you to hit this house?" "Some guys at the Rusty Nail Bar outside Kalispell," he stammered. "Bikers. Said they were expanding business in the area, needed to know which houses were worth hitting." Maya's blood ran cold. "These bikers. They have a name, Black something, Black Spades, had patches with a spade and skull. The Black Spades, a notorious motorcycle gang with chapters spreading across the Northwest in recent years. Their primary business was meth distribution, with side ventures in weapons trafficking and protection rackets. Maya had investigated their operations during her FBI days a lifetime ago, or so she'd thought. "You tell these bikers you came here—" No. Was gonna surprise them, show initiative, get in their good graces." Maya nodded thoughtfully, then, with surgical precision, applied pressure to the carotid artery in his neck. The young man slumped unconscious within seconds. She lowered him carefully to the floor, retrieved a zip tie from her delivery bag, and secured his hands behind his back. From the kitchen drawer, she took a notepad and pen, quickly writing a note explaining the situation for the Williams family. The laptop went back to the home office. Maya then dragged the unconscious intruder to the front porch and called Sheriff Anderson. "Tom, it's Maya. I've got a would-be burglar tied up at the Williams place." She gazed out at the mountains, suddenly feeling the weight of her past rushing back. And we might have a bigger problem heading for Pine Ridge. Sheriff Anderson arrived 20 minutes later, his cruiser kicking up dust as it climbed the long driveway. By then, Maya had searched the unconscious intruder, finding only a wallet with an Idaho driver's license, $63 in cash, and a prepaid phone. "Well, well, Curtis Landry from Coeur d'Alene," Anderson said, checking the ID. "Long way from home for a burglary." He glanced at Maya, who stood with arms crossed watching the tree line. "Want to tell me how a delivery woman managed to subdue a man twice her size without a scratch?" Maya had prepared for this question. 3 years of Krav Maga in Seattle before I moved here. Self-defense is essential for a woman living alone. It wasn't entirely a lie. She'd trained in Krav Maga along with 5 other combat disciplines during her time at Quantico. Anderson's weathered face revealed nothing, but his eyes held a knowing look. "That's so impressive technique, leaving him breathing and everything." "Would you prefer I'd let him stab me?" Maya challenged. "Not what I meant." And the sheriff handcuffed the now stirring burglar and helped him to his feet. "Just making an observation." As Anderson guided the dazed man toward the patrol car, Maya followed. "He mentioned something you should know. Said he was trying to impress some bikers at the Rusty Nail the Black Spades. Claimed they're expanding business in the area." Anderson froze, his expression darkening. "You sure about that name?" "That's what he said." Maya watched the sheriff's reaction carefully. "You've heard of them. Every law enforcement officer in the Northwest has heard of the Black Spades." Anderson opened the cruiser's back door and roughly deposited Curtis inside. "Started as a small-time gang in Spokane about 15 years ago. Now they control most of the meth trade from eastern Washington to western Montana. Violent, organized, connected." He slammed the door and turned to Maya. "If they're eyeing Pine Ridge—" "Why would they?" Maya asked, though she already suspected the answer. "Remote location, limited law enforcement, perfect for distribution operations. Meth labs need isolation. Our county has the lowest population density in the state." Anderson removed his hat, running a hand through thinning gray hair. "And we've only got 3 deputies covering 900 square miles." Maya nodded, processing the implications. "The outsiders you mentioned this morning could be related. I'll make some calls, see what other counties are hearing." The sheriff studied her with that penetrating gaze that always made Maya wonder how much he truly suspected about her past. "Might be nothing, might be trouble." "Let me know if I can help," she offered, then immediately regretted the words. Getting involved was exactly what she'd sworn never to do again. Anderson's eyebrow lifted slightly. "Delivery woman with Krav Maga skills, I'll keep that in mind." He tipped his hat and turned toward his vehicle, then paused. "Maya, be careful out there. These aren't small-town troublemakers. The Spades. They play for keeps." After the sheriff drove away with the burglar, Maya completed her delivery to the Williams family, who had been in Kalispell for the day. She left out the details of her confrontation with the intruder, simply explaining that she'd interrupted a burglary and called the sheriff. As twilight painted the mountains in deepening blues and purples, Maya guided her motorcycle back toward town, her mind churning with unwelcome thoughts. The Black Spades, a name from the past she'd tried so hard to leave behind. In her FBI days, she'd helped build cases against several of their lieutenants, though the organization always seemed to survive Hydra-like sprouting new leadership when old ones fell. Had they followed her here? No. Impossible. Her exit from the bureau had been quiet, her new identity built carefully. This was coincidence, nothing more. Yet the cold weight in her stomach suggested otherwise. Main Street was quiet as she passed through town. The Mountain Brew had closed for the day. Only the Elk Horn Bar showed signs of life country music and laughter spilling from its doors into the gathering darkness. Maya slowed, noticing 3 motorcycles parked outside high-end Harley-Davidsons with custom paint jobs. Not local bikes. She rode past without stopping, her decision already made. The cabin waited dark and silent as she pulled into the driveway. Maya performed her usual perimeter check before entering more carefully than usual. Nothing disturbed. No unwelcome visitors. Inside, she moved directly to her bedroom closet, knelt, and opened the hidden compartment in the floor. The biometric safe recognized her fingerprint immediately. Inside lay the remnants of her former life: a Glock 19 with 3 magazines, a set of lockpicks, a burner phone, $8,000 in cash, 3 passports with different names, but her photo and a badge she had no right to keep, but couldn't bring herself to surrender. FBI Special Agent Maya Reeves. Her real name, the one she'd abandoned 5 years ago after the Hawkins case went catastrophically wrong. 3 agents dead. A key witness executed. And Maya, the lone survivor, left with questions about whether the ambush had been tragic coincidence or something more sinister. She'd carried her suspicions up the chain of command, only to hit walls at every turn. The official narrative became clear: a tragic operational failure, but nothing more. When the threats began subtle at first, then increasingly explicit, Maya understood the message. Someone powerful wanted her to stop asking questions. So Special Agent Reeves disappeared, and Maya Reynolds was born. Now she loaded the Glock, methodically, muscle memory taking over. The weight of the weapon felt both foreign and familiar in her hand, like greeting an old friend she'd hoped never to see again. Maya moved to the kitchen table with her laptop. Sheriff Anderson might make his calls, but she had resources of her own, encrypted access to databases no delivery woman should possess. If the Black Spades were moving into Pine Ridge territory, she needed to know who, why, and whether it had anything to do with her past. 3 hours later, she had her answers, at least some of them. The Black Spades had indeed expanded operations into western Montana over the past 6 months, establishing distribution networks in 3 counties surrounding Pine Ridge. Their president, Ray Blackwood, had recently been released from federal prison after serving 5 years for weapons charges stemming from an FBI operation Maya had helped build. Coincidence, perhaps. More concerning was a recent intelligence report noting that the Spades were diversifying beyond their traditional meth business into fentanyl production, deadlier, more profitable, and requiring more sophisticated operation security. Maya closed her laptop and moved to the window, staring into the darkness beyond. The peace she'd built here now felt as fragile as a soap bubble. 5 years of normal life, or the closest approximation she could manage, threatened by shadows from her past. She had choices. Run again, find a new town, a new identity, start over, or stay and face whatever came. Neither option appealed. The burner phone from her safe lay on the table, unused for years. One call to her old handler at the bureau might provide answers, but would also alert them to her location. Maya wasn't ready for that. Not yet. She tucked the Glock into the small of her back, covered by her jacket. Tomorrow she would continue her deliveries as usual, eyes open for anything out of place. Pine Ridge had become home, the first real home she'd known since childhood. She wouldn't abandon it without a fight. But as Maya prepared for bed, checking locks and setting improvised alarms at key entry points, she couldn't shake the feeling that 5 years of running had finally caught up with her. The next 3 days passed without incident, settling Maya's nerves somewhat. She maintained her delivery schedule, keeping vigilant watch for unfamiliar faces or vehicles. The motorcycles outside the Elk Horn Bar disappeared. Sheriff Anderson reported that Curtis Landry had been transferred to county lockup, pending charges maintaining his story about trying to impress the bikers. Life in Pine Ridge continued its usual rhythms until Thursday afternoon. Maya had just finished a delivery at the Thompson farm when her phone buzzed with a text from Doc Miller. Need emergency delivery to Holloway ASAP. Heart medication. Critical. She frowned, checking the time. Mrs. Holloway had a month's supply of her regular medications. An emergency prescription meant complications. 20 minutes later, Maya collected the medication from Doc Miller, who explained that Mrs. Holloway had called reporting chest pains. He'd phoned in a nitroglycerin prescription to alleviate potential angina. "I've got the paramedics on standby," he told Maya. "But with the road conditions up to her place, I'll get there faster," Maya finished for him. "If it's serious, I'll call them in." The ride to Mrs. Holloway's cabin took Maya along Forest Service Road 237, a winding dirt track that cut through dense pine forest before climbing toward the ridge where the old woman lived. About 2 miles from the main highway, Maya noticed fresh tire tracks in the soft dirt motorcycle treads, heavy bikes, by the depth of impression. Multiple vehicles had passed this way recently, heading toward Holloway's place. Maya slowed every sense on high alert. This road led nowhere except the old woman's isolated cabin. No reason for multiple motorcycles to be here. She cut the engine a quarter-mile from the cabin, concealing her bike behind a stand of pines. Moving silently through the underbrush, Maya approached on foot, the medication secure in her jacket pocket, the Glock now in her hand. The first sign of trouble came into view at the edge of the clearing, 3 Harley-Davidsons parked haphazardly in front of Mrs. Holloway's cabin. Black and chrome machines adorned with the unmistakable skull and spade emblem of the motorcycle gang. Maya's blood ran cold. Through the cabin's front window, she could make out figures moving inside. Mrs. Holloway sat rigid in her recliner, while 3 men in leather cuts bearing the Black Spades insignia loomed over her. Even from this distance, Maya could see the old woman's face, pale but defiant. No sign of physical violence yet. This appeared to be intimidation rather than assault. But why target an 83-year-old woman in an isolated cabin? The answer came as one of the bikers gestured emphatically toward a topographical map spread on Mrs. Holloway's coffee table. They were interested in the land, or something on it. Maya weighed her options. 3 armed men against 1 woman with a handgun and limited cover. Direct confrontation would be suicide. Calling the sheriff meant at least 30 minutes before help arrived too long. She circled around to the rear of the cabin where a small back porch offered a secondary entrance. Mrs. Holloway always kept the spare key in a rusted coffee can beside the back steps. Maya retrieved it, silently grateful that the old woman's hearing loss meant she kept the back door well-oiled to better hear approaching visitors. The key turned smoothly in the lock. Maya eased the door open just enough to slip inside, finding herself in a narrow mudroom adjacent to the kitchen. Voices carried clearly from the living room. "Listen, Grandma, we're not asking." A deep voice, impatient. "The property rights to this ridge transferred to your husband's mining company in 1963. We know because we've seen the county records. All we need is your signature saying you're granting access rights for surveying." Mrs. Holloway's voice remained steady. "My husband's company folded in 1976. These rights reverted to the family trust, and I'm not signing anything without my lawyer present." A second voice, smoother, more controlled. "Mrs. Holloway, we're prepared to offer $50,000 for simple access rights. That's very generous. Generous for land containing one of the largest natural limestone cave systems in Montana." The old woman laughed bitterly. "You must think I'm senile as well as old." Maya inched forward, positioning herself where she could see into the living room through the kitchen doorway. Mrs. Holloway sat straight-backed in her recliner, staring down three men whose backs were to Maya. The largest wore a leather vest with a president patch, the chapter leader. "We tried being nice." The leader's voice hardened. "But we're getting those access rights one way or another. Might be a shame if a fire started out here. Emergency response times are what, 40 minutes our lot can burn in that time." Mrs. Holloway's eyes flicked toward the kitchen, spotting Maya in the shadows. To her credit, the old woman's expression never changed. Threatening an old woman. She shook her head slowly. "What would your mothers think?" "My mother's dead," the leader snarled, taking a menacing step forward. "Just like you'll be if you don't sign these papers." Maya had heard enough. She stepped into the doorway, Glock raised. "Pine Ridge Sheriff's Department, hands where I can see them." The three men froze, then slowly turned. The president, a hulking figure with a shaved head and beard, shot through with gray assessed Maya with cold calculation. The patches on his vest identified him as Ray Blackwood. The intelligence was correct. The Spades president was personally overseeing their expansion into Pine Ridge. "Sheriff's Department," Blackwood's mouth twisted into a smirk. "Funny you look like the delivery girl from town, playing dress-up with that gun sweetheart." Maya kept her weapon steady. "All of you on your knees, hands behind your head." The youngest of the three started to comply, but Blackwood held up his hand. "Hold on, Dex." His eyes never left Maya. "She's bluffing. Real cops announce themselves differently." He took a step toward Maya. "That piece even loaded delivery girl." Maya shifted her aim and fired in one fluid motion. The bullet shattered a glass vase 2 inches from Blackwood's head. He froze, genuine surprise crossing his features. "Next one won't miss," Maya said calmly. "On your knees, all of you." This time they complied, even Blackwood, though rage burned in his eyes. "Mrs. Holloway," Maya said, keeping her gaze on the three men. "Please, call Sheriff Anderson and tell him you have intruders threatening you." The old woman reached for her phone with a hand that trembled slightly. "Already did when I saw them coming up the drive. Should be here any minute." She fixed Blackwood with a steely glare. "Called my lawyer, too." As if on cue, the distant wail of sirens filtered through the pine forest. Blackwood's jaw tightened, but he maintained his position on the floor. "You have no idea what you're stepping into," he said quietly to Maya. "No idea who we're connected to." "Threats aren't going to improve your situation," Maya replied evenly. "Not a threat. A reality check." Something in his voice sent a chill down Maya's spine. "Pine Ridge is changing. Smart folks will adapt. Stubborn ones—" He shrugged. "Well, accidents happen in these mountains all the time." Before Maya could respond, Sheriff Anderson's voice boomed from outside. "This is the sheriff. Everyone inside, come out with your hands visible." 20 minutes later, the 3 Black Spades members sat handcuffed in separate patrol vehicles. Anderson had called in his deputies for backup, and the small caravan prepared to transport the bikers to the county jail on charges of criminal threatening and trespassing. Maya stood with the sheriff near Mrs. Holloway's porch, keeping her voice low. They wanted access rights to the limestone caves on her property, willing to pay $50,000. Anderson frowned. Caves. What would bikers want with caves? Perfect place to set up a lab. Remote. Temperature controlled. Natural ventilation. Maya had seen it before in her FBI days. The chemicals used in manufacturing fentanyl are highly volatile. Underground facilities minimize explosion risks. The sheriff studied her with that penetrating gaze. You seem to know an awful lot about this for a delivery woman. Maya met his eyes steadily. I read a lot. Uh-huh. Anderson glanced toward his patrol car, where Ray Blackwood sat watching them through the window. Well, we can hold them for 48 hours, but without Mrs. Holloway pressing formal charges, they'll walk. She'll press charges, Maya assured him. I'll make sure of it. Even so. The sheriff sighed heavily. Men like Blackwood, they don't give up easily, and they don't forget faces. He looked pointedly at Maya, especially not someone who pulled a gun on them. I can handle myself. So I've noticed. Anderson's weathered face creased with concern. Maya, whatever you were before you came to Pine Ridge, and I suspect it was something a sight more dangerous than delivery services, you should know that Blackwood has connections. Federal connections. Maya felt her heart rate quicken. What do you mean? I made those calls after the burglary at the Williams place. Turns out the Black Spades have been untouchable in certain jurisdictions. Cases that should have put Blackwood away for decades mysteriously fall apart. Witnesses recant or disappear. The sheriff lowered his voice further. Word is someone high up is protecting them. The cold weight in Maya's stomach solidified. Corruption in federal law enforcement wasn't new to her. She'd suspected it played a role in the Hawkins case disaster. But the Black Spades, specifically, that connection was too coincidental to ignore. I appreciate the warning, she said carefully. Anderson nodded toward the medication bag still in Maya's hand. Better get that to Mrs. Holloway. I'll handle things out here. He started to turn away, then paused. And Maya, whatever's coming to Pine Ridge, I hope you're on our side when it hits. Inside the cabin, Mrs. Holloway sat calmly at her kitchen table, looking remarkably composed for someone who had just faced down 3 threatening bikers. Brought your heart medication, Maya said, placing the bag on the table. Though you seem to be handling stress just fine. The old woman snorted. Takes more than leather-wearing thugs to stop this heart. Been beating since 1940 through worse than them. She fixed Maya with a knowing look. You handled that gun like you were born with it. Maya busied herself filling a glass of water. Luck and adrenaline. Bullshit. Mrs. Holloway rarely swore. I've lived long enough to know when someone's hiding something. She accepted the medication with gnarled fingers. Those men will be back, you know. They want these caves badly. Why, what's special about them? The old woman rose slowly, moving to a wooden cabinet in the corner. From a drawer, she withdrew a faded topographical map. Come here. Maya joined her as Mrs. Holloway spread the map on the table, her finger tracing along ridge lines until it stopped at their location. These caves run nearly 7 miles underground. Multiple chambers, 3 separate entrances, natural water supply from an underground spring. She tapped the map. My Henry mapped them all back in the 60s when the mining company was considering limestone extraction. But he discovered something that made him shut down the whole operation. What? Maya asked, intrigued despite herself. The cave system connects to old military tunnels from the Cold War era. The government built a secret bunker out here, monitoring station for missile silos in the region. Abandoned in the 70s, but the infrastructure remains. Mrs. Holloway's blue eyes met Maya's, including direct access roads that don't appear on public maps. Perfect for moving things or people without being noticed. Maya stared at the map, the implications clear. Not just a drug lab, a full distribution hub hidden literally underground with secret access routes. Does anyone else know about this? Just my lawyer. And now you. The old woman reclaimed her seat, suddenly looking her age. Henry made me promise never to sell access rights to anyone. Said the wrong people could do terrible things with a place like that. Maya nodded slowly. He was right. She studied the old woman carefully. Mrs. Holloway, it might be best if you stayed in town for a while. These men, they won't give up easily. I haven't left this ridge in 12 years, not since Henry's funeral. The old woman's jaw set stubbornly. I'm not leaving now because some thugs want my land. They threatened to burn your home down, Maya reminded her. Let them try. Mrs. Holloway's eyes flashed. I keep a shotgun by my bed and enough ammunition to hold off an army. Maya recognized the futility of arguing. Then I'll stay with you, at least for a few days. Don't be ridiculous. You have deliveries to make. I'll arrange coverage. Maya's decision was already made. These men are dangerous, Mrs. Holloway. More dangerous than you realize. The old woman studied her for a long moment, then nodded once. Fine, but you'll sleep in the guest room, not on the couch. I won't have you keeping watch all night like some hired guard. Maya smiled thinly. Of course. But as darkness fell and Mrs. Holloway retired to her bedroom, Maya positioned herself in the living room with clear sightlines to both the front and back entrances, the Glock never far from reach. She texted Sheriff Anderson her plan to stay with the old woman, receiving a terse message of approval in return. Outside, a nearly full moon cast silver light across the ridge, throwing the surrounding forest into stark patterns of light and shadow. Perfect visibility for anyone approaching, but also for anyone watching from the trees. Maya dimmed the interior lights and kept vigil, certain that Ray Blackwood's arrest was merely the opening move in a game that had suddenly become very personal. The Black Spades wanted these caves badly enough for their president to handle it personally. They wouldn't abandon the plan because of one setback. And now Maya had put herself directly in their path. A part of her, the part that had once carried a badge with pride, welcomed the confrontation. Perhaps this was why she'd ended up in Pine Ridge. Not to hide from her past, but to finally face it. As midnight approached, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You made a mistake today. We know who you really are, Agent Reeves. Maya stared at the screen, ice flooding her veins. Her cover was blown. 5 years of careful anonymity shattered with a single text. The message continued, we have mutual enemies. Meet tomorrow. Noon. Rusty Nail Bar. Come alone, or Mrs. Holloway's medical condition might suddenly worsen. She deleted the message, mind racing. They knew her real identity. They knew about Mrs. Holloway, and they claimed to have mutual enemies, which made no sense unless someone inside the FBI was indeed connected to the Black Spades, just as she had suspected after the Hawkins disaster. The same corrupt elements that had forced her into hiding might now be expanding their criminal enterprise to Pine Ridge. Maya moved to the window, scanning the tree line. Somewhere out there, someone was watching, waiting. The peaceful life she'd built in these mountains was unraveling thread by thread. Tomorrow at noon, she would face a choice: run again or stand and fight. But this time, running wouldn't erase the danger, not for her and not for the community that had become her home. For the first time in 5 years, Special Agent Maya Reeves emerged from the shadows of Maya Reynolds' carefully constructed life. And she was ready for war. Dawn broke over Mrs. Holloway's ridge in shades of lavender and gold, finding Maya still at her post by the window. She had dozed intermittently throughout the night, never fully sleeping, her body remembering the vigilance of stakeouts and protective details from her former life. The Glock rested on the side table within easy reach, its presence both reassuring and a bitter reminder of the life she'd tried to leave behind. The text message from the night before had changed everything. Someone knew her real identity. Someone connected to the Black Spades had tracked her to Pine Ridge. The careful anonymity she'd built over 5 years had crumbled with a few simple words on a screen. Maya moved silently through the cabin, checking locks and sightlines as the first rays of sunlight illuminated the clearing outside. No sign of intruders or surveillance. If someone was watching, and she was certain they were, they kept their distance. The aroma of coffee drifted from the kitchen. Mrs. Holloway stood at the ancient percolator, already dressed in her usual flannel and jeans despite the early hour. "Thought I heard you moving about," the old woman said without turning. "Sleep well?" "Well enough." Maya accepted the offered mug with a grateful nod. "You're up early?" "Been rising with the sun for 60 years. Don't see reason to change now." Mrs. Holloway settled at the kitchen table, eyeing Maya with those shrewd blue eyes that missed nothing. "You look like hell, by the way." A smile tugged at Maya's lips, despite the tension coiled in her shoulders. "Thanks. Those men from yesterday, they'll be back, won't they?" Maya considered lying, offering false reassurance, but Eleanor Holloway deserved better. "Yes, probably soon." The old woman nodded, unsurprised. "Figured as much." She sipped her coffee thoughtfully. "You know something about them. Something more than you're saying." It wasn't a question. Maya stared into her coffee, weighing her next words carefully. How much to reveal? How much would put the old woman at greater risk? "In my previous life, I encountered organizations like theirs." Maya chose her words with precision. "They don't give up easily, especially not when there's profit involved." "Previous life," Mrs. Holloway echoed. "Interesting way of putting it." Maya met her gaze directly. "I need to go into town today. I don't want to leave you alone, but I survived '83 Montana winters, girl. I can handle a few hours without a babysitter." The old woman's voice softened slightly. "But I appreciate the concern. I'll ask Sheriff Anderson to send a deputy to check on you." Mrs. Holloway snorted. Tom's deputies couldn't find their own backsides with both hands and a map. She rose slowly, moving to a cabinet beside the refrigerator. From inside, she withdrew a weathered shotgun, checking the action with practiced hands. "My Henry's Remington still works just fine. Been oiling it weekly since 1964. Maya watched the easy familiarity with which the old woman handled the weapon. "You know how to use that." "Girl, I was shooting varmints off this property when Lyndon Johnson was president." Mrs. Holloway's eyes twinkled. "Now, go do what you need to do. I'll be just fine." Before leaving, Maya secured the cabin as best she could, checking sightlines and creating improvised alarms at potential entry points, skills from her FBI days that had never quite faded. She gave Mrs. Holloway her personal cell number and the burner phone from her safe, with instructions to call immediately if anything seemed amiss. The motorcycle roared to life beneath her, carrying her down the winding forest road toward town. Maya kept her speed, moderate eyes constantly scanning the surroundings, alert for any sign of ambush or surveillance. The weight of the Glock at the small of her back provided little comfort against the gnawing uncertainty of what awaited her at the rusty nail bar. Pine Ridge appeared unchanged as she passed through the ordinary rhythms of small-town life, continuing without interruption. Customers at the Mountain Brew chatted over coffee. Old Mr. Jenkins swept the sidewalk in front of his hardware store. Sheriff Anderson's cruiser sat empty outside the station. Maya continued past town, following Highway 37 north for 20 miles until the weathered sign for the Rusty Nail appeared on the roadside. The bar stood alone amidst a grove of aspens, its log exterior and neon beer signs a familiar landmark for travelers and locals alike. At just past 11 in the morning, the gravel parking lot contained only a handful of vehicles, including 3 Harley-Davidsons parked in a neat row near the entrance. She parked her BMW on the opposite side, positioning it for a quick exit, if necessary. The Glock remained concealed at her back as she removed her helmet and ran a hand through her hair. Whatever awaited her inside, she would face it as Maya Reeves, the agent she had once been, not the delivery woman she had pretended to be for 5 years. The interior of the Rusty Nail smelled of stale beer and pine cleaner. Country music played softly from ancient speakers mounted in the corners. A bartender wiped glasses behind the scarred wooden bar, nodding to Maya as she entered. 3 men in black spades leather cuts occupied a corner booth, heads turning in unison as the door closed behind her. Not Ray Blackwood, he would still be in custody. These were different members, unfamiliar faces, watching her with calculated interest as she stood just inside the entrance, allowing her eyes to adjust to the dim interior. A 4th man sat alone at a table near the back, his back to the wall, positioning that allowed clear sightlines to both the front and rear exits. No leather cut, just a dark jacket over a button-down shirt. Clean-shaven with short-cropped hair and the unmistakable bearing of law enforcement. Maya felt a jolt of recognition, though she'd never seen this man before. Federal. Had to be. The way he carried himself, the watchful eyes, the deliberate positioning all screamed bureau training. He lifted a hand, gesturing to the empty chair across from him. Maya approached cautiously, every sense heightened, aware of the bikers tracking her movement across the room. She took the offered seat, positioning herself to keep both the stranger and the bikers in her peripheral vision. "Agent Reeves," the man's voice was quiet, measured. "Or do you prefer Reynolds these days? Who are you?" Maya kept her own voice low, matching his tone. "Agent Daniel Morris, DEA." He showed her credentials briefly, too quickly for her to verify their authenticity. "I've been looking for you for quite some time." Maya's hand instinctively moved closer to her concealed weapon. "Why would the DEA be looking for me?" "Because we have a mutual problem." Morris nodded toward the bikers in the corner. "The Black Spades are expanding their operation into Pine Ridge County. My team has been tracking them for 18 months. And what does that have to do with me?" A thin smile crossed his face. "Don't play naive, Agent Reeves. It doesn't suit you. You were investigating connections between the Spades and certain elements within the Bureau before you disappeared." Maya kept her expression neutral, though her pulse quickened. "I don't know what you're talking about." "The Hawkins case." Morris leaned forward slightly. 3 agents dead, a key witness executed, and you, the lone survivor, suddenly retiring and vanishing without a trace. Very convenient. "Careful, Agent Morris." Maya's voice hardened. "You're walking a dangerous line." "Am I?" He raised an eyebrow. 5 years ago, you were building a case against Ray Blackwood and the Black Spades. You discovered evidence suggesting someone inside the Bureau was protecting their operation. Before you could take that evidence up the chain, your team was ambushed. Everyone died, except you." He paused, studying her reaction. "And now, by sheer coincidence, Blackwood and his crew show up in the same tiny Montana town where you've been hiding." Maya felt cold anger rising within her. "If you know all this, then you know why I left. The Bureau buried the investigation, classified the ambush as an operational failure. When I pushed for answers, I started receiving threats." "I believe you." Morris's response surprised her. "That's why I'm here. The corruption you stumbled onto 5 years ago, it's spread. The Spades should have been dismantled years ago, but they keep slipping through our fingers. Cases collapse, evidence disappears, witnesses recant. And you think I can help you? How exactly? You had evidence, names, financial trails linking Bureau officials to the Spades operations." Morris lowered his voice further. "I need that evidence, Agent Reeves, before Blackwood and his crew finish establishing their new base of operations here." Maya studied him carefully, looking for signs of deception. "You're DEA. This should be an interagency task force, if what you're saying is true. Where's your team? Something flickered across Morris's face. Discomfort, perhaps. This investigation isn't officially sanctioned. The corruption reaches too high. I don't know who I can trust within my own agency, let alone the Bureau. Warning bells sounded in Maya's mind. A lone agent, no backup meeting in a remote location. Either Morris was telling the truth about working alone against corruption, or— "How did you find me?" she asked. Facial recognition hit from a traffic camera in Kalispell 3 weeks ago. "Once I had a location, it wasn't hard to track your movements." He grimaced slightly. "I'm not the only one looking for you, Agent Reeves. Others will find you eventually. I'm just trying to get to you first, to the evidence you have before they do." Maya kept her expression neutral. "And the text message last night? That was you." Morris frowned. "What text message?" Either he was an excellent actor, or he genuinely didn't know about the text. Maya filed away this inconsistency, her suspicion growing. "Never mind." She nodded toward the bikers in the corner. "Are they with you?" "Not exactly. They work for Blackwood, but they don't know my real identity. They think I'm a corrupt FBI agent looking to get paid for information about you." A grim smile touched his lips. "It's provided useful cover while I build my case." Maya leaned back slightly, considering her options. If Morris was legitimate, he could be a valuable ally. If he was part of the corruption she'd fled 5 years ago, engaging with him could be fatal. "I need time to think about this," she said finally. "We don't have time." Morris glanced toward the bikers, who had been joined by 2 more men entering the bar. "Blackwood may be in custody, but his operation continues. They're setting up a major fentanyl production facility somewhere in Pine Ridge County. Once it's operational, this quiet little town of yours becomes the distribution hub for the deadliest drug epidemic the Northwest has ever seen." Maya thought of Mrs. Holloway's caves, the perfect location for such an operation. "What exactly do you want from me?" "Your evidence from 5 years ago. Names, dates, financial transactions. Whatever you had that was worth killing your team to protect." Morris's eyes hardened. "And your help taking down both the Spades and their protectors inside our agencies. You know this territory. You know the players. And you have nothing to lose." The last statement rang false in Maya's ears. She had plenty to lose now, a community, a purpose, people who depended on her. Mrs. Holloway, Sheriff Anderson, the life she'd carefully built from the ashes of her former existence. "I'll consider it," she said, starting to rise. Morris grabbed her wrist, his grip surprisingly strong. "Don't play games, Reeves. People are dying from the poison these men distribute. While you've been hiding in these mountains, the Spades have expanded operations across 3 states. Children are overdosing on fentanyl in high schools. Families are being destroyed." Maya pulled her arm free, anger flashing in her eyes. "Don't lecture me about duty, Agent Morris. You have no idea what I've sacrificed." "I know exactly what you've sacrificed." His voice dropped to a near whisper. "Your career, your identity, your colleagues. Agent Phillips was your partner for 7 years, wasn't he? They found him with 2 bullets in his head, and your name written in his blood." The words hit Maya like a physical blow. James Phillips had been more than her partner. He'd been her mentor, her friend, the closest thing to family she'd had since her parents died. The official report never mentioned the writing in blood. That detail had been withheld from all but those first on the scene, which meant either Morris had access to classified information or he had been there. "You've made your point," Maya said coldly. "I'll be in touch." As she turned to leave, Morris spoke again too softly for anyone else to hear. "Holloway's Caves. That's where they're planning to set up shop. I'd hate for anything to happen to the old woman when they go to secure the location." Maya froze, then slowly turned back. "Are you threatening Mrs. Holloway?" "I'm stating facts. The Spades want those caves. You've put yourself between them and their objective." Morris's expression remained impassive. 48 hours, Agent Reeves. That's how long Blackwood stays in county lockup without federal charges. After that, he walks. And his first order of business will be dealing with you and the old woman. Maya said nothing, her mind racing as she processed the implications. Morris knew about the caves. He knew about Mrs. Holloway. Either he was deep in this investigation, as he claimed, or he was working with the Spades. Either way, he was dangerous. "I'll be in touch," she repeated, and this time he let her go. The bikers watched her cross the bar, their expressions unreadable beneath beards and mirrored sunglasses. One made a phone call as she pushed through the door into the sunlight, speaking in hushed tones. Maya mounted her motorcycle, adrenaline coursing through her veins. Morris's words echoed in her mind. 48 hours. The clock was ticking. Sheriff Anderson was waiting outside the Mountain Brew when Maya returned to Pine Ridge, his weathered face creased with concern. He straightened as she parked her motorcycle, gesturing for her to join him at a corner table on the cafe's small patio. "Got your message about staying with Mrs. Holloway," he said as she sat across from him. "Sent Deputy Harmon up there to keep an eye on things. Good kid, former Marine. Knows how to handle himself." Maya nodded, grateful. "Thanks, Tom." The sheriff studied her face carefully. "Want to tell me where you've been this morning? Because it looks like you've seen a ghost." For a moment, Maya considered telling him everything about Morris, the DEA investigation, her true identity. But the habit of secrecy ran deep, and until she knew who to trust, silence remained her safest option. "Just checking on some deliveries," she lied smoothly. "Any word on when Blackwood and his friends will be released? County prosecutors reviewing the case. Without serious charges, we can't hold them more than 48 hours. Anderson's eyes narrowed slightly. "Why, you expecting trouble? People like that don't take kindly to being arrested." Maya kept her voice casual. "Just want to be prepared." The sheriff nodded slowly, unconvinced but unwilling to push. "Maya, I've respected your privacy since you moved here. Never asked questions about your past, figured you'd tell me if it became relevant." He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "I think we've reached that point." Maya felt a surge of affection for this man who had welcomed her to Pine Ridge without reservation, who had somehow known she carried secrets, but had given her space to heal. He deserved the truth, or at least part of it. "I used to work in law enforcement," she admitted quietly. "Made some enemies, left that life behind when things got complicated." Anderson absorbed this with a thoughtful nod. "Federal." Maya hesitated, then inclined her head slightly. "Thought so. Way you carry yourself. How you handled that burglar at the Williams place." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Not many delivery women know defensive tactics like that. "Tom, the Black Spades aren't just passing through. They're planning something big in Pine Ridge County." Maya glanced around, ensuring no one could overhear. "Underground fentanyl production. They want Mrs. Holloway's caves because they're perfect for an isolated climate controlled with hidden access roads from the Cold War era." The sheriff's expression darkened. "How do you know this?" "I can't reveal my source." Maya met his gaze steadily. "But I believe it's credible." Anderson was silent for a long moment, processing the information. "If that's true, we're talking about a major drug operation moving into my county, beyond what my department can handle." "I know. Should be contacting the DEA FBI." He trailed off, studying her face. "But something tells me you don't want federal involvement." which makes me wonder what exactly happened in that previous life of yours. Maya chose her next words carefully. Let's just say I have reason to believe certain federal agents might not have Pine Ridge's best interests at heart. Understanding dawned in the sheriff's eyes. That's why you're here. Not just running from something, hiding from your own people. Some of them, Maya confirmed quietly. Not all, but I don't know who to trust. Anderson nodded slowly, decision forming in his weathered features. Then we handle this ourselves. My jurisdiction, my rules. He straightened in his chair. I've got 3 deputies, all good men. Town has maybe a dozen veterans who still know how to handle themselves in a fight. If the Spades want to set up shop in Pine Ridge, they'll find it's not as easy as they thought. Maya felt a surge of gratitude tempered by concern. These aren't small-time criminals, Tom. They're organized, well-funded, and they play for keeps. So do I. The sheriff's voice hardened. Been protecting this county for 27 years. Not about to let some out-of-state gang turn it into a drug factory on my watch. He rose from the table. I'll make some calls, get my deputies briefed. You head back to Mrs. Holloway's, make sure she's safe. We'll coordinate from there. As Anderson walked toward his cruiser, Maya felt a complex mix of emotions. Relief at having an ally. Concern for the danger she'd brought to this community. And an uncomfortable realization that for the first time in 5 years, she was doing what she'd been trained for, protecting the innocent from predators who would destroy them for profit. Before heading back to Mrs. Holloway's, Maya made a detour to her cabin. She needed supplies, weapons, and most importantly, the evidence Morris had mentioned, evidence she had indeed taken with her when she fled her former life. The cabin appeared undisturbed as she approached, but Maya took no chances. She circled the perimeter carefully, checking for signs of intrusion before entering through the back door, Glock drawn. Everything seemed in place. The sparse furniture, the bookshelves, the framed photographs carefully arranged to create the impression of a normal life. But Maya had spent too many years in the field to miss the subtle indicators, a kitchen chair angled slightly differently than she'd left it. The barely perceptible scent of unfamiliar cologne. The window latch that showed microscopic scratches around the edges. Someone had been here. Recently. Professionally. Moving silently through the cabin, Maya headed directly for her bedroom closet. The hidden compartment in the floor appeared untouched, but when she entered the biometric code, the safe clicked open to reveal nothing. The extra ammunition, the cash, the passports, all gone. Most importantly, the waterproof case containing a flash drive with encrypted files, her insurance policy from 5 years ago, had vanished. Maya stood motionless, cold fury washing over her. Morris. It had to be. His meeting at the Rusty Nail had been a distraction while someone else, another agent, perhaps searched her cabin. Which meant either Morris had found her days ago and had been watching, learning her routines, or someone else had beaten him to it. Her burner phone buzzed in her pocket. A text message from the same unknown number as before. Thanks for the insurance policy, Agent Reeves. Saves us both time. Still need to talk. Same place. 7 p.m. Maya's mind raced through the implications. If Morris had the evidence, why meet again? Unless he hadn't been the one to take it. Unless someone else had beaten them both to it. The sound of tires on gravel outside pulled her from these thoughts. Maya moved to the window, peering carefully around the edge of the curtain. A motorcycle, not a Harley, but a sleek Ducati, pulled up beside her BMW. The rider dismounted, removing his helmet to reveal a face Maya had hoped never to see again. Special Agent Victor Crane, her former supervisor at the Bureau. The man who had shut down her investigation 5 years ago. The man she suspected had authorized the termination of her team. Maya felt ice replace the blood in her veins. If Crane was here in Pine Ridge, the situation was far worse than she had imagined. He wasn't just any agent, he was assistant director of the Criminal Enterprise Division with connections throughout the federal law enforcement community. And he was walking toward her front door with the casual confidence of a predator who knows his prey is cornered. Maya had seconds to decide. Confront him, flee. Neither option appealed, but staying meant revealing how much she knew or didn't know. She needed time to process the theft of her evidence, to understand what Morris's role truly was. Decision made, she slipped out the back door as Crane's knock sounded at the front. Moving silently through the woods behind her cabin, Maya circled around to where her motorcycle waited. She could see Crane at her door phone in hand, apparently calling for backup. No time to waste. Maya mounted her BMW and roared down the driveway, not looking back, as she accelerated onto the main road toward Mrs. Holloway's ridge. Whatever game was being played between Morris Crane and the Black Spades, she needed to ensure the old woman remained safe while she figured out her next move. As the forest blurred past, Maya fought the rising tide of memories, the ambush that had killed her team, the evidence she'd gathered pointing to corruption at the highest levels of the Bureau, the threats that had driven her into hiding. For 5 years, she'd convinced herself she was safe, that her enemies had forgotten her, or presumed her dead. Now those enemies had found her, and worse, they'd found the community she'd sworn to protect. The peaceful life she'd built in Pine Ridge was collapsing around her, and people she cared about were in the crosshairs. For the first time since fleeing her former life, Maya felt the cold clarity of purpose that had once defined her. If they wanted a war, she would give them one, but this time she would choose the battlefield. Mrs. Holloway's ridge came into view as Maya crested the final hill, the old woman's cabin perched stoically against the backdrop of pine forest and mountain peaks. Deputy Harmon's patrol SUV sat in the driveway beside an unfamiliar black sedan with government plates. Maya slowed her approach, alarm bells ringing in her mind. Federal vehicle. Here. Now. She cut the engine, a quarter-mile from the cabin, concealing her motorcycle in the same stand of pines she'd used the day before. Moving through the forest on foot, Maya approached cautiously, the Glock drawn and ready. Through a break in the trees, she could see 3 figures on Mrs. Holloway's porch. The old woman sat in her rocking chair, apparently calm, speaking with Deputy Harmon, and a third person whose back was to Maya, a man in a dark suit that screamed federal agent. Maya edged closer, using the tree line for cover, straining to hear their conversation over the rustle of pine needles in the afternoon breeze. Just routine questions, Mrs. Holloway. The suited man's voice carried clearly in the mountain air. We're investigating potential environmental violations connected to the limestone cave system on your property. Environmental Protection Agency doesn't usually send armed agents, Mrs. Holloway replied, skepticism evident in her tone. Special circumstances. The man produced identification. The caves may contain endangered bat species protected under federal law. We've received reports of unauthorized access attempts. Maya recognized the cover story for what it was: flimsy pretense to gain access to the cave system. But was this man working with Morris with Crane? Or was he legitimate EPA unwittingly interfering in a much more dangerous situation? Deputy Harmon shifted uncomfortably, hand resting near his service weapon. Young, late 20s maybe, with the hyper-vigilant posture of someone who had seen combat. Sheriff Anderson asked me to remain with Mrs. Holloway until he arrives, he stated firmly. Perhaps you could come back then. I'm afraid this matter is time-sensitive. The agent's voice hardened slightly. And it falls under federal jurisdiction, Deputy. Maya had heard enough. Regardless of this man's true affiliation, his presence complicated an already dangerous situation. She needed to get Mrs. Holloway to safety before Crane or the Black Spades arrived. Decision made, she circled around to the back of the cabin using the same entrance as before. Inside, she moved silently through the kitchen, pausing at the edge of the living room to assess the situation through the front windows. The agent still stood with his back to the cabin, facing Mrs. Holloway and Deputy Harmon on the porch. From this angle, Maya could see what the others couldn't: a second man approaching from the tree line on the far side of the clearing, weapon drawn. No time for subtlety. Maya threw open the front door, Glock raised. "Federal agent, everyone down." The suited man spun toward her, reaching inside his jacket. Deputy Harmon, to his credit, reacted instantly, drawing his service weapon and moving to shield Mrs. Holloway. "Down now!" Maya shouted, advancing onto the porch. The suited man froze, recognition flashing across his features. Reeves, Maya Reeves. In her peripheral vision, Maya saw the second man hesitate at the edge of the clearing, then retreat into the trees. "Hands where I can see them," she ordered, keeping her weapon trained on the suited man. "Identify yourself." "Special Agent Howard Chen, FBI Environmental Crimes Unit." He slowly moved his hand away from his jacket, showing his palms. "I worked violent crimes in the Seattle field office 5 years ago. We never met, but I knew your reputation." Maya kept her expression neutral, mind racing. Chen could be legitimate. The FBI did have an environmental crimes unit that sometimes investigated violations on federal land. Or he could be working with Crane, using a plausible cover to gain access to the caves. "What's your business here, Agent Chen?" "I could ask you the same thing." His eyes narrowed. "Last I heard, you retired after the Hawkins disaster. Some said you had a breakdown. Others said you turned. Answer the question." Maya's voice remained steady, but inside alarm bells were clanging. If Chen recognized her, others would too. Her cover in Pine Ridge was completely blown. "I'm investigating reports of unauthorized access to protected cave systems." Chen glanced at Mrs. Holloway, who watched the exchange with remarkable composure. "But I suspect we're both here for the same reason. The Black Spades." Deputy Harmon looked bewildered, his weapon still drawn, but uncertainty evident in his posture. "Someone want to tell me what the hell is going on?" "Maya," Mrs. Holloway's voice cut through the tension. "Is this man who he says he is?" A fair question, one Maya couldn't answer with certainty. But the second man in the trees, the one now retreating, suggested Chen wasn't alone, and that raised more questions than answers. "Deputy," Maya said, not lowering her weapon, "call Sheriff Anderson. Tell him we need backup at the Holloway property immediately." Chen's expression tightened. "That would be a mistake. This is a federal matter now." "This is Sheriff Anderson's jurisdiction," Maya countered. "And until I know exactly who's involved and what's happening, local law enforcement stays in the loop." A tense standoff followed, as Deputy Harmon made the call, his voice low and urgent. Mrs. Holloway remained in her rocking chair, watching the exchange with eyes that missed nothing. "He's on his way," Harmon reported, tucking his phone away. "ETA 20 minutes. "We don't have 20 minutes, Chen said grimly. "Reeves, we need to talk. Privately." Maya weighed her options. If Chen was legitimate, he might have information she needed. If he wasn't, keeping him close would at least allow her to monitor his actions. "Inside," she decided, gesturing toward the cabin door. "Deputy, stay with Mrs. Holloway. Don't let anyone approach." Inside, Maya positioned herself with her back to the wall, maintaining clear sight lines to both Chen and the windows. The Glock remained in her hand, not pointed directly at him, but ready to raise in an instant. "Talk," she commanded. Chen sighed, running a hand through his short-cropped hair. I'm part of a joint FBI-DEA task force investigating corruption within both agencies connected to the Black Spades. We've been building a case for 18 months. Your name came up repeatedly in the files, specifically the evidence you gathered before the Hawkins operation went sideways. If there's a task force, where's your team? Maya challenged. Scattered, maintaining cover. We learned the hard way that conventional operations get compromised. Chen's expression darkened. 3 agents dead in the past year. Surveillance discovered. Informants eliminated. The details matched what Morris had told her, which either meant both men were telling the truth or they were working from the same playbook of lies. Morris sent you, Maya probed, watching his reaction carefully. Chen's eyes widened slightly. Genuine surprise, or excellent acting. Daniel Morris, the DEA agent. He's here. You tell me. He claims to be running a similar investigation. Solo. Understanding dawned in Chen's features. Morris isn't task force. He was suspended from the DEA 3 months ago, pending an internal investigation. Allegations of evidence tampering in a Spades case. He leaned forward intently. If he contacted you, it wasn't authorized. Maya processed this information, uncertainty gnawing at her. Morris had seemed convincing, but so did Chen. Either could be lying. The only certainty was that her stolen evidence was now in someone else's possession. My cabin was searched today, she said, watching Chen carefully. Evidence I took when I left the bureau, evidence about corruption connected to the Spades, was stolen. Wasn't us. Chen shook his head firmly. We've been trying to locate that evidence for months. It's why I'm here, why the task force has been searching for you. And Assistant Director Crane, is he part of your task force too? Chen's expression changed subtly, a flicker of something like fear crossing his features. Crane is here, in Pine Ridge. Arrived at my cabin less than an hour ago. Jesus! Chen ran both hands through his hair, now genuine distress evident. This is worse than we thought. Crane isn't task force, he's one of our primary suspects. If he's here personally... A chill ran down Maya's spine. Victor Crane, with his impeccable record and political connections, had been her prime suspect 5 years ago, the man she believed had orchestrated the ambush that killed her team. But proving it had been impossible, his tracks covered too well. Reeves, listen to me. Chen's voice dropped lower urgency in every syllable. If Crane is here, we're all in danger. He doesn't leave witnesses. The task force believes he's been the Spades' primary protection inside the Bureau for nearly a decade. Your evidence could have exposed him. Outside, the sound of an approaching vehicle drew their attention. Maya moved to the window, peering cautiously through the curtains. Sheriff Anderson's cruiser pulled into the driveway, the man himself emerging with shotgun in hand. Sheriff's here, she reported, not taking her eyes off the scene outside. No sign of other vehicles or movement in the tree line. If what you're saying is true, Chen, then we need to move quickly. Get Mrs. Holloway to safety, secure the cave entrances. It's too late for that. Chen joined her at the window. If Crane is personally involved, he's already called in resources, probably has a team in place watching all access points. He turned to face her directly. Your evidence, what exactly did it contain? Maya hesitated, old instincts of caution warring with the need for allies in what was rapidly becoming a war zone. Financial records. Offshore accounts linked to shell companies controlled by the Spades. Phone records showing calls between Crane and Ray Blackwood dating back 7 years. And surveillance photos, Crane meeting with Blackwood at a private airstrip outside Seattle. Chen let out a low whistle. No wonder he wants you silenced. That's enough to end his career, maybe put him behind bars. He glanced outside again as Sheriff Anderson conferred with Deputy Harmon. We need to coordinate with local law enforcement, set up a perimeter. The task force has resources, but they're scattered across 3 states. It will take time to mobilize. Time we don't have, Maya finished for him. Blackwood gets released tomorrow unless formal charges are filed. And now Crane is here, probably with a tactical team. So we work with what we've got. Chen straightened, decision made. Local deputies, your sheriff, and us. Hold the line until backup arrives. Maya wasn't convinced. Too many unknowns, too many potential enemies masquerading as allies. Morris claimed to be investigating corruption, but might be corrupt himself. Chen claimed to represent a task force, but had arrived alone. Crane was definitely in Pine Ridge, but his purpose beyond silencing Maya remained unclear. And somewhere in this web of deception and danger, the Black Spades still pursued their original objective, Mrs. Holloway's caves. First priority is the old woman's safety, Maya said firmly. Then we secure the cave entrances. If the Spades can't access the site, they can't set up their operation. Chen nodded agreement. I can arrange protective custody for Mrs. Holloway. Federal marshals secure location. No. Maya's response was immediate and firm. No federal custody, not until I know exactly who to trust. She stays with locals, people I've vetted personally. Before Chen could argue, Sheriff Anderson entered the cabin, shotgun held casually but ready, his weathered face grave. Maya, Agent Chen. He nodded to each of them. Want to tell me why my quiet county suddenly has more federal agents than a presidential motorcade? Maya met the sheriff's gaze directly. Remember our conversation about my previous life? It just caught up with me and with Pine Ridge. She gestured to Chen. Agent Chen claims to be part of a task force investigating the Black Spades and corruption within federal agencies. I haven't verified his credentials. And I haven't verified yours, Chen countered. Beyond your reputation. For all I know, you could have become Crane's asset. Anderson's eyebrows rose at the mention of Crane. Assistant Director Victor Crane, the one who testified before Congress last year about drug trafficking, the same, Chen confirmed. And he's here in Pine Ridge, which means whatever is happening is bigger than we thought. The sheriff absorbed this with remarkable composure. Mrs. Holloway mentioned limestone caves when I arrived, something about the Black Spades wanting access rights. That connected to all this. The caves are perfect for a fentanyl production facility, Maya explained. Remote climate controlled with hidden access roads dating back to the Cold War. If the Spades secure that location, Pine Ridge becomes ground zero for the largest drug operation in the Northwest. Anderson's expression hardened. Not on my watch. He turned to Chen. Assuming you are who you say you are, Agent, what resources can your task force provide? Because my department is 3 deputies and whatever local volunteers I can muster. Limited for now, Chen admitted. Most of our team is embedded or running surveillance operations across 3 states. I can request backup, but it would take at least 12 hours to mobilize. We don't have 12 hours, Maya said grimly. If Morris was telling the truth about one thing, it's that Blackwood walks tomorrow. And with Crane here personally, the timetable has accelerated. Anderson processed this tactical calculations, evident in his expression. First step is securing Mrs. Holloway. I know a place hunting cabin belonging to my brother-in-law. Remote defensible off any official records. Good. Maya nodded approval. Second step is establishing surveillance on the cave entrances. Mrs. Holloway has detailed maps, 3 access points, plus the old military tunnel. I'll handle that, Chen offered. I have equipment in my vehicle. Motion sensors, cellular cameras, with encrypted feeds. Anderson eyed him skeptically. And we're supposed to trust that these feeds aren't being monitored by whoever you're working against. You're not, Chen acknowledged. But right now, you don't have many options. The frank admission actually increased Maya's confidence in Chen's legitimacy. A fake agent would have offered false assurances. Chen was acknowledging the reality of their situation. Trust was a luxury none of them could afford. We work with what we have, she decided. Sheriff, get Mrs. Holloway to safety. Chen, set up your surveillance. I'll coordinate between you. She hesitated, then added, and I need to find Morris. If he doesn't have my evidence, we need to know who does. And if he does have it, Chen asked, then we need to verify if he's really suspended, really corrupt, or playing some deeper game. Maya checked her watch. He wants to meet at the Rusty Nail at 7. That gives us 4 hours to prepare. Anderson nodded, tactical planning replacing uncertainty. I'll call my deputies and brief them on the situation. Harmon stays with Mrs. Holloway. Chen, you coordinate with Maya on the surveillance. Everyone maintains radio contact. He approached Chen with a hard stare. But understand this, agent. This is my county. These are my people. If I catch even a whiff that you're not who you claim to be, our partnership ends permanently. The implied threat hung in the air, but Chen merely nodded respect, evident in his expression. Understood, Sheriff. As Anderson left to arrange Mrs. Holloway's evacuation, Chen turned to Maya. For what it's worth, I believed you 5 years ago, when you raised concerns about the Hawkins operation, about potential leaks. Not everyone in the Bureau is corrupt. Maya studied him, wanting to believe, aware of the risks of misplaced trust. Prove it. Help me protect these people, this town, from what's coming. I intend to. Chen moved toward the door, then paused. But Reeves, if Crane is personally involved, this isn't just about the spades anymore. It's about covering tracks, eliminating loose ends. His expression softened slightly. And you're the loosest end of all. As Chen departed to retrieve his surveillance equipment, Maya stood alone in Mrs. Holloway's living room, the weight of the past 5 years pressing down upon her. She had run from this confrontation, hidden herself away in these mountains, convinced herself she could start fresh. But some debts demand payment. Some enemies never forget. And some battles once begun can only end when one side or the other is completely destroyed. The quiet life of Maya Reynolds had ended the moment Ray Blackwood set foot in Pine Ridge. Now only Agent Maya Reeves remained, with all the skills, determination, and cold fury that had once made her one of the Bureau's most effective operators. As the afternoon sun cast long shadows across Mrs. Holloway's porch, Maya checked her weapon and prepared for war. The enemy had found her hiding place, threatened her community, endangered people she cared about. They were about to discover why she had been feared even among her own colleagues. Because Maya Reeves didn't just enforce the law, she embodied it. And those who positioned themselves against it would learn the cost of their choice. Twilight descended on Pine Ridge, painting the mountains in deepening shades of purple and gold. Maya stood at the edge of the forest, overlooking the Rusty Nail Bar, watching as vehicles came and went in the gravel parking lot. The bar's neon sign flickered to life against the darkening sky, casting a red glow across the asphalt. No motorcycles in the lot. No black government sedans, just the usual collection of pickup trucks and SUVs belonging to locals seeking respite from the workday. Maya checked her watch, 6:45 p.m. 15 minutes until her scheduled meeting with Morris. She touched the earpiece concealed beneath her hair. Position check. Sheriff Anderson's voice came through clearly. Southeast corner service entrance. Clear sight lines to the parking lot and main road. Chen, Maya prompted, when no other response followed. Silence stretched for several seconds before Agent Chen's voice crackled through. Northwest ridge covering the rear exit and forest approach. Motion sensors deployed at 50-yard intervals. Maya frowned at the delay. Just poor reception in these mountains, or something more concerning. She filed away the inconsistency, adding it to her mental ledger of questions surrounding Chen's true allegiance. After evacuating Mrs. Holloway to the sheriff's brother-in-law's hunting cabin with Deputy Harmon standing guard, Maya had coordinated their surveillance of the Rusty Nail. If Morris appeared as promised, they would confront him together, determine whether he possessed Maya's stolen evidence, and assess his true role in the unfolding drama. But Maya had her doubts. Too many players converging too quickly. Morris, Chen, Crane, the Black Spades, each claiming different motives, each potentially lying. Movement at the tree line north side, Chen reported suddenly. Single figure approaching on foot. Maya scanned the area, Chen indicated catching a glimpse of dark clothing moving through the pines. I see him. Male, approximately 6 feet, athletic build. Morris, Anderson asked over the comm. Can't confirm from this distance. Maya adjusted her position, keeping to the shadows as she circled toward the north side of the property. The figure had stopped just within the tree line, apparently observing the bar from cover exactly as Maya herself was doing. Sheriff, maintain position, she instructed. Chen, do you have visual on any other approaches? Negative. Wait vehicle, approaching from the east access road. Black SUV, no lights. Maya felt her pulse quicken. The east access road wasn't visible from the main highway, only locals and those with specific knowledge of the area would use it. She turned, catching sight of headlights moving through the trees, still a quarter-mile from the bar, but approaching steadily. Anderson, can you identify the vehicle? Negative from my position, but that road connects to the old logging trail that passes near Mrs. Holloway's property. The implications were clear. Someone familiar with the local terrain was approaching with deliberate stealth. Maya made a swift decision. Change of plans. Sheriff, intercept that vehicle. Chen, maintain surveillance on our friend in the tree line. I'm heading into the bar. Maya, Anderson began, concern evident in his voice. If this is an ambush, better to control the ground. She cut him off, already moving toward the bar's entrance. If I'm not out in 20 minutes, assume the worst. The interior of the Rusty Nail was half full. Thursday night regulars nursing beers and playing pool beneath flickering lights. Country music drifted from ancient speakers, providing background noise that would make electronic surveillance difficult, one of the reasons Maya had agreed to meet here in the first place. She chose a booth near the back, positioning herself with clear sight lines to both entrances. The Glock remained concealed at her back, but she'd added a knife in an ankle sheath, insurance against the increasing odds that this meeting would end violently. A waitress approached recognition, lighting her features. Maya, haven't seen you in here before. Donna Mackenzie, whose groceries Maya delivered twice monthly to a remote cabin 10 miles outside town. First time for everything, Maya offered a tight smile. Just a club soda, thanks. Donna nodded, sensing Maya's mood wasn't conducive to small talk. As she retreated toward the bar, the front door swung open. Daniel Morris entered, scanning the room with the practiced efficiency of a federal agent before his gaze settled on Maya. He approached her booth, directly sliding into the seat opposite without invitation. You came alone. His tone conveyed surprise rather than satisfaction. Smarter than I expected. Did I? Maya countered, maintaining eye contact while staying aware of her peripheral vision. No sign of the figure from the tree line entering. No commotion from the direction of the east access road, where Anderson had gone, to intercept the mystery vehicle. Morris smiled thinly. Sheriff Anderson is currently engaged with a very confused pizza delivery driver who took a wrong turn on the East Access Road. Agent Chen is watching an off-duty forest ranger who stopped to relieve himself at the tree line. And you're sitting across from me completely exposed. He leaned forward slightly. We need to talk, Agent Reeves, without your improvised tactical team listening in. Maya concealed her surprise. Morris had identified both her allies and their positions, suggesting either extensive surveillance or inside information. Neither possibility was comforting. You have my evidence, she stated flatly. Yes. No denial, no elaboration. Just simple confirmation. How? I've been in Pine Ridge for 3 weeks, watching you, learning your routines. Once I identified your residence accessing, it was trivial. Morris accepted the beer Donna delivered without acknowledging her presence. The question isn't how I obtained it, but what I intend to do with it. Maya studied him carefully, looking for tells the micro-expressions that might reveal deception. Chen says you've been suspended from the DEA, under investigation for evidence tampering in a Spades case. If the information surprised Morris, he concealed it perfectly. Chen has his facts wrong, not unusual for an agent compromised by ambition. So you're not suspended. I'm on administrative leave, voluntary, created the necessary space for my investigation. Morris took a sip of his beer, gaze never leaving Maya's face. The corruption goes deeper than you knew 5 years ago, Reeves. Your evidence was just the beginning, the first thread in a tapestry of betrayal that extends to the highest levels of multiple agencies, including Assistant Director Crane. Morris's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. So you've seen him, here in Pine Ridge. At my cabin, shortly after you stole my evidence. Not a coincidence. Morris glanced toward the windows, a hint of genuine concern crossing his features. Crane has resources beyond what you can imagine. Unofficial teams, black budget operations. If he's here personally, the situation has escalated beyond my predictions. Maya leaned forward slightly. Why should I believe anything you say? You broke into my home, stole evidence that could clear my name, threatened Mrs. Holloway. I never threatened the old woman. Morris's denial carried the ring of truth. That wasn't me. A chill ran down Maya's spine. If Morris hadn't sent the text about Mrs. Holloway, who had another player she hadn't identified yet, the evidence, she pressed. Where is it now? Secure and duplicated. Morris's voice dropped lower. Your financial records confirmed what I'd suspected. Crane has been providing protection for the Black Spades for nearly a decade. But it goes beyond simple corruption. The Spades aren't just distributing drugs. They're acting as a private enforcement arm for certain government operations. Deniable assets. Maya processed this connections forming in her mind. The Hawkins case. My team wasn't ambushed because we were getting close to the Spades. We were eliminated because we were getting close to their government connections. Morris nodded grimly. Your surveillance photos showed more than just Crane meeting with Blackwood. The metadata, when properly analyzed, revealed the presence of a third party at that airstrip, a CIA operative named Richardson allegedly killed in Afghanistan 3 years earlier. The implications staggered Maya. Not just corruption within the FBI and DEA, but a cross-agency conspiracy involving intelligence services. Operations hidden behind the veneer of drug enforcement. Why Pine Ridge? She asked, mind racing to connect the fragments. Why now? Geographical isolation, minimal law enforcement presence, proximity to the Canadian border. Morris ticked off the factors methodically. But most importantly, the cave system beneath Holloway's property. It's not just ideal for drug production, it connects to old military tunnels that extend for miles, including routes that cross beneath the border undetected. Human trafficking, Maya realized with growing horror. They're establishing a pipeline. For certain high-value targets, yes. People the official channels can't touch without oversight. The drug operation is real, but it's also cover for something far more sinister. Morris's expression darkened. Crane isn't just protecting criminals for profit Reeves. He's executing policy, unofficial, unsanctioned operations using criminal proxies. Maya's comm unit crackled to life in her ear. Maya Anderson here. No pizza delivery. Vehicle disappeared. Possible diversion. A sudden burst of static cut off the sheriff's warning. At the same moment, Morris tensed his gaze, shifting toward the front entrance. Maya turned in time to see three men enter, not bikers, but the unmistakable look of tactical operators in civilian clothes. Close-cropped hair, scanning eyes, hands positioned for quick access to concealed weapons. "Crane's team," Morris muttered. "We need to move. Now." Before Maya could respond, the rear door burst open. Two more operators entered, moving with practiced efficiency toward their position. Maya made a split-second assessment. 5 operators. Crowded civilian environment. Limited exits. Fire exit through the kitchen, she decided already, sliding from the booth. Morris nodded, reaching inside his jacket not for a weapon, but a small cylindrical object. "Cover your eyes," he warned, then tossed it toward the front entrance. The flashbang detonated with a blinding burst of light and concussive sound. Patrons screamed, diving for cover, as Morris grabbed Maya's arm, pulling her toward the kitchen as the tactical team momentarily reeled from the disorientation. They burst through the swinging doors into the kitchen, startling 2 cooks, who cursed in surprise. Maya spotted the fire exit at the far end, a red illuminated sign marking their escape route. "Federal agents," one of the tactical operators shouted from the main room, recovering quickly. "Everyone down!" Maya and Morris sprinted through the kitchen, dodging around stainless steel counters and bewildered staff. Behind them, the operators regrouped, pursuing with grim efficiency. The fire exit opened onto a small loading dock at the rear of the building. Maya scanned for threats as they emerged into the cool night air. No immediate signs of additional operators, but the sound of vehicles approaching from the main road suggested reinforcements were inbound. "This way," Morris directed, heading toward the tree line where Chen had reported the earlier movement. "I have transportation." Maya hesitated, uncertainty gnawing at her. Morris had stolen her evidence, broken into her home. Yet his warning about Crane rang true, matching her own suspicions from 5 years ago. The decision was made for her as the fire door burst open behind them, an operator emerging with weapon drawn. "Federal agents, stop, or we will fire." Maya drew her Glock in one fluid motion, firing 2 precise shots, not at the operator, but at the external light illuminating the loading dock. Darkness enveloped them as the bulb shattered, giving them precious seconds to disappear into the tree line. They ran through the forest, following what appeared to be a game trail, winding between ancient pines. Maya strained to hear any communication from Anderson or Chen through her earpiece, but only static greeted her efforts. "Comms are being jammed," Morris confirmed, navigating the darkness with surprising confidence. "Standard procedure for Crane's operations. Isolate targets, eliminate communication, then sanitize the area." "Sanitize," Maya pressed, keeping pace beside him. "Make it look like something else. Gang violence. Tragic accident." Morris's voice hardened. "Crane doesn't leave evidence or witnesses." They emerged into a small clearing where a matte black motorcycle waited, concealed beneath a camouflage tarp. Morris pulled the covering away, revealing a military-grade dirt bike designed for silent operation. "One ride," Maya observed. "You didn't plan on extracting me." "Plans change." Morris swung his leg over the seat. "We need to reach the sheriff and Chen before Crane's team does. Coordinates for extraction are already programmed in the GPS." Maya hesitated, her instincts warring with necessity. Morris had answers she needed, possessed evidence that could clear her name. But trusting him meant gambling with more than her own life. The sound of pursuit through the forest decided her. Maya climbed onto the motorcycle behind Morris, the Glock still clutched in her right hand. Mrs. Holloway's cabin first. If Crane knows about the caves, that's where he'll focus his operation. Morris nodded, starting the engine remarkably quiet for its size and accelerating into the darkness. Behind them, flashlight beams cut through the forest as the tactical team closed in on their former position. As they sped through the night, Maya tried to process Morris's revelations. Not just corruption, but a sanctioned black operation using criminal organizations as proxies. International human trafficking disguised as drug enforcement. And Crane at the center, eliminating anyone who threatened to expose the truth, including Maya's team 5 years ago. The pieces fit together with terrible clarity. Her suspicions had been justified, but the reality was far worse than she had imagined. And now, Pine Ridge, her refuge, her home, had become the next staging ground for their operation. The motorcycle crested a ridge, and Mrs. Holloway's cabin came into view in the valley below. Maya felt her blood run cold at the sight that greeted them. 3 black SUVs surrounded the small structure, their headlights illuminating tactical teams establishing a perimeter. Men in dark clothing moved with military precision, securing approaches and positioning themselves for what was clearly an imminent breach operation. "Crane beat us here," Morris muttered, cutting the engine and coasting to a stop behind the cover of a large boulder. "At least 10 operators. Heavy weapons." Maya scanned the scene below, assessing options and finding none appealing. "They don't know the sheriff moved Mrs. Holloway. They're securing the cave entrance. Or setting up an ambush," Morris countered. "If Crane knew about your meeting with me, he might know about your evacuation plan too." The possibility sent a surge of fear through Maya's chest. Had she led Crane's team directly to Mrs. Holloway's hiding place? Had her efforts to protect the old woman instead placed her in greater danger? "We need to warn the sheriff," she decided, trying her comm unit again and receiving only static in response. "And find Chen, assuming he's not working with Crane." Morris produced a satellite phone from his jacket. "Secure line. Can't be jammed with the equipment they have on site." He offered it to Maya. "Call Anderson. Direct line, no switching through local towers." Maya dialed the sheriff's personal number, maintaining her surveillance of the cabin below as the phone connected. After 3 rings, Anderson's gruff voice answered. "Who is this?" "It's Maya. Secure line. Is Mrs. Holloway safe?" A pause, then, "For now. Had to relocate. Harmon reported vehicles following our initial route." The sheriff's voice tightened. "What the hell is happening? Maya Harmon says he's pinned down by what looks like a professional hit team, and I've got reports of gunfire at the Rusty Nail." "It's worse than we thought." Maya explained quickly about Crane's team, the black operation using the spades as cover, and the true purpose of the cave system. "They're not just after me anymore, Tom. They're eliminating anyone who might expose their operation." "Jesus!" Anderson absorbed this with remarkable composure. "What about Chen He with you?" "Negative. Lost contact when Crane's team jammed communications. Last I heard, he was moving to secure the main cave entrance on the North Ridge." The sheriff paused, background noise suggesting he was in a vehicle. "Maya, I've called in every deputy and retired officer in the county. Got about 15 men mobilizing, but we're outgunned and outmanned if these are federal tactical teams. They're not official, Maya clarified. Black operation, no sanctions, no oversight. Meaning no rules of engagement, Anderson concluded grimly. My kind of fight. Despite the dire circumstances, Maya felt a surge of affection for the old sheriff. Hold your position. Protect Mrs. Holloway. Morris and I will try to locate Chen, then link up with you. Morris, the DEA agent you weren't sure about. Maya glanced at Morris, who was maintaining watch on the cabin below. Still not sure, but right now, he's what I've got. Be careful, Maya. Whatever you were before, you're one of ours now. Pine Ridge protects its own. The simple declaration hit Maya with unexpected force. 5 years in these mountains, building a life, connecting with a community that had accepted her without question. Now that community faced destruction because of her past, and yet they stood with her still. I'll contact you when we find Chen, she promised, ending the call and returning the satellite phone to Morris. We need to circle around, approach the North Ridge from the west. Avoid Crane's team at the cabin. Morris nodded agreement. If Chen is legitimate, he'll have established surveillance on the cave entrance. If he's working with Crane, then we'll deal with that when we confirm it. Maya finished, unwilling to abandon hope that at least one federal agent besides herself maintained their oath to uphold the law. They remounted the motorcycle, taking a winding path through the forest that would lead them to the North Ridge while avoiding the cabin clearing. As they traveled, Maya remained hyper-alert for signs of pursuit or ambush, the Glock ready in her hand. The North Ridge loomed before them 15 minutes later, a stark silhouette against the star-filled sky. Morris cut the engine a quarter-mile from their objective, and they proceeded on foot, moving silently through the underbrush. The cave entrance was barely visible, a dark recession in the rocky face of the ridge, partially concealed by pine trees and native shrubs. No signs of Chen or his surveillance equipment, but Maya spotted fresh boot prints in the soft earth near the entrance. Someone's been here recently, she whispered, crouching to examine the impressions. Single, individual, tactical boots, moving with purpose. Morris drew his weapon, a compact Sig Sauer with suppressor attached. Could be Chen. Could be Crane's advance team scouting access points. A twig snapped in the darkness to their right. Both Maya and Morris pivoted toward the sound weapons raised. Identify yourself, Maya called softly, finger poised on the trigger. Silence stretched for several seconds before a familiar voice responded from the shadows. It's Chen. Don't shoot. Agent Howard Chen emerged from the tree line, hands slightly raised to show he carried no weapon. Blood matted the left side of his face from a gash along his hairline, and his suit was torn and dirty. What happened? Maya demanded, not lowering her weapon completely. Ambushed at my surveillance position. Chen gestured to his head wound. Professional team, military precision. Would have killed me if they'd known I was federal, must have mistaken me for a local. He noticed Morris for the first time, eyes narrowing. Morris, should have known you'd be involved in this mess. Chen, Morris acknowledged with a terse nod. Still climbing the ladder at the bureau, or did your ambition finally exceed your reach? The hostility between the two men was palpable. Maya interposed herself between them, focus returning to the mission. Save it, both of you. Chen, did you manage to deploy any surveillance before you were attacked? Chen nodded, wincing slightly at the movement. Motion sensors at the 3 main cave entrances. Camera feed was transmitting to my laptop before it was destroyed in the attack. Did you identify any activity at the entrances? Negative at this location and the east entrance. But the south entrance, the one nearest Mrs. Holloway's cabin, showed significant movement about 30 minutes ago. multiple individuals entering the cave system with equipment. Morris and Maya exchanged glances, understanding passing between them. "They're already setting up inside," Morris concluded, using the cabin raid as cover for their real objective. "The question is whether they're Crane's team or the Black Spades," Maya mused. "Or both." "Does it matter?" Chen challenged. "Either way, they're establishing an illegal operation that threatens this entire region." Maya made a swift decision. "We need to get inside, confirm exactly what they're doing. Chen, can you make it back to town, link up with Sheriff Anderson? He's mobilizing local law enforcement." Chen hesitated, suspicion evident in his expression. "You trust Morris to watch your back? After what happened in Seattle?" The question caught Maya off guard. "What are you talking about? I never worked with Morris in Seattle." A subtle shift occurred in Chen's demeanor, almost imperceptible, but Maya had spent years reading the micro-expressions of suspects and witnesses, a tightening around the eyes, a slight tension in the jaw. "My mistake," Chen said smoothly. "Must have confused case files." But Maya knew better. Chen had just made a critical error, revealing knowledge he shouldn't possess about her history with Morris, knowledge that didn't exist because they had never worked together. Morris had reached the same conclusion. His weapon, which had lowered slightly, returned to full readiness, aimed directly at Chen's chest. "Interesting slip, Agent Chen. Especially since Agent Reeves and I never operated in the same field office, let alone collaborated on a case in Seattle." Chen's expression hardened, the pretense of alliance evaporating. "You always were too clever for your own good, Reeves. Should have stayed hidden in these mountains." "You're working with Crane," Maya stated, certainty replacing suspicion. "Have been all along." "Not with him. For him." Chen's posture shifted, subtly weight, transferring to the balls of his feet, the stance of a man preparing to attack or flee. Assistant Director Crane recognizes necessity, understands that sometimes conventional law enforcement isn't enough. "You're helping traffic human beings," Maya said, disgust evident in her voice, "using the Spades as cover for black operations that violate every principle of the oath you took." Chen's laugh held no humor. "Principles? The world doesn't run on principles, Reeves. It runs on power and control. The operation here, what you've stumbled into, is sanctioned at the highest levels. National security." His gaze hardened. "Your evidence threatened years of careful work, endangered operations that protect American interests across 3 continents. "Enough talk," Morris interjected, his weapon never wavering from Chen's chest. "On your knees, hands behind your head." Chen's smile was cold. "I don't think so." His hand moved suddenly toward his jacket. Maya fired first, a controlled double tap to Chen's shoulder rather than center mass, designed to incapacitate, not kill. The agent staggered backward, crying out in pain as blood blossomed across his suit jacket. "Federal agent, drop your weapon," a new voice commanded from the darkness behind them. Maya whirled to find 3 tactical operators emerging from the tree line, weapons trained on her and Morris. More movement to their left revealed additional team members converging on their position. "Down now," the lead operator ordered. Morris responded by diving for cover behind a nearby boulder, returning fire with precise shots that forced the tactical team to scatter. Maya followed his lead, using a large pine tree as cover while assessing their deteriorating situation. 6 operators visible, likely more approaching from different angles. Chen wounded, but still a threat. And the cave entrance, their objective now blocked by Crane's team. "Morris," she called over the sporadic gunfire. "Options! Secondary entrance," he replied, firing another suppressed round toward their attackers. "Northeast, face 200 yards from here. Old mining shaft connects to the main system. Maya remembered the topographical map Mrs. Holloway had shown her. The vertical shaft. That's a 70-foot drop. I came prepared. Morris reached into his jacket, producing a compact grappling device. Cover me, then follow. 10 seconds. Before Maya could argue, Morris broke from cover, sprinting toward the denser forest to their right. Maya provided covering fire, forcing the tactical team to keep their heads down as Morris disappeared into the darkness. She waited 5 seconds, then fired her remaining rounds in a suppressive pattern before following Morris's path into the forest. Bullets thudded into trees around her as she ran, staying low and changing direction frequently to present a more difficult target. The forest floor sloped upward as Maya climbed the ridge following Morris's trail through the underbrush. Behind her, she could hear the tactical team regrouping, shouted commands, indicating they were organizing a pursuit. Morris waited at the crest of the ridge beside what appeared to be an old mining ventilation shaft, a dark opening in the rocky ground, reinforced with ancient timbers that had somehow survived decades of Montana winters. "They're right behind me," Maya reported, breathing heavily from the exertion. Morris nodded already, securing the grappling device to a sturdy pine beside the shaft opening. This connects to the main cave system about a quarter-mile from where Chen reported activity. We go down, find evidence of their operation, then contact Anderson for backup. Maya reloaded her Glock, mind racing through the implications. If we confirm it's a black operation with federal connections, local law enforcement won't be enough. We need proof, something that can't be buried or explained away. That's why I brought this. Morris produced a small camera from his pocket. Encrypted uploads automatically to secure servers. Whatever we find down there becomes impossible to deny. The sound of pursuit grew louder, voices calling to each other through the forest, flashlight beams sweeping between trees as Crane's team closed in on their position. "Ladies first," Morris gestured to the rappelling line now dangling into the darkness of the shaft. Maya hesitated only briefly before securing the line to her belt and beginning her descent into the unknown. The shaft dropped away beneath her, a seemingly bottomless void that swallowed the weak illumination from Morris's tactical flashlight. She rappelled smoothly, years of training overcoming the natural fear of the precipitous descent. The air grew colder, damper as she descended, carrying the mineral scent of limestone and stagnant water. Her boots touched solid ground approximately 70 feet below the surface. Maya released the line, drawing her weapon and activating the small tactical light attached to her belt. The beam revealed a rough-hewn tunnel extending in 2 directions, the original mining passage that had intersected with the natural cave system. Morris joined her moments later, his descent almost silent save for the slight scrape of boots against rock as he landed. Above them, flashlight beams played across the shaft opening as Crane's team reached their former position. "They'll follow," Morris whispered, releasing the rappelling line and letting it fall to prevent immediate pursuit. "But it will take time to secure their own equipment. We have maybe 15 minutes before they're on our tail." Maya nodded, studying their surroundings. "Which way to the main cavern?" Morris consulted a small device, some kind of specialized GPS that apparently functioned underground. "East Tunnel, half-mile to the junction with the natural cave system. From there, another quarter-mile to where Chen reported activity." They moved swiftly through the narrow passage, the beam of their lights revealing mining equipment abandoned decades earlier, rusted carts, pickaxes, support beams cracked with age. The tunnel gradually widened, the rough-hewn walls giving way to the smooth limestone formations of the natural caves. The temperature dropped further as they progressed deeper into the earth, their breath fogging in the cold, damp air. Water dripped from stalactites overhead, creating haunting echoes that masked any sounds of pursuit from behind. After 20 minutes of cautious progress, Morris held up his hand, signaling Maya to stop. Ahead, a faint glow illuminated the passage artificial light, spilling from what appeared to be a larger chamber beyond the next bend. They extinguished their own lights, allowing their eyes to adjust to the dim illumination ahead. Voices carried through the cave system indistinct murmurs, suggesting multiple individuals engaged in some kind of activity. Maya moved forward silently, pressing herself against the damp limestone wall as she approached the bend in the passage. Peering cautiously around the corner, she beheld a scene that confirmed their worst suspicions. The natural cavern beyond had been transformed into a makeshift operations center. Portable lights on stands illuminated a space roughly the size of a basketball court. Plastic sheeting divided areas designated for different purposes. Men in tactical gear moved with purpose between stations, while others in the distinctive leather cuts of the black spades stood guard at key positions. In the center of the cavern, a familiar figure directed operations with the confidence of someone accustomed to command. Assistant Director Victor Crane, his tailored suit incongruous in the subterranean setting, conferred with Ray Blackwood, the Black Spades president, who should have been in county lockup. "Blackwood's been released?" Maya whispered to Morris, who had joined her at the observation point. "Or Crane arranged his escape." Morris nodded grimly, producing the camera and beginning to document the scene. "Look at the equipment they're installing. That's not just for drug production." Maya followed his gaze, noting the sophisticated communications array being assembled along one wall of the cavern. Military-grade equipment far beyond what would be needed for a simple drug operation. "Communications hub," she murmured, "for coordinating cross-border movements. And more." Morris zoomed the camera on a section where operators were installing what appeared to be detention cells, metal-barred enclosures with concrete floors. Temporary holding facilities for high-value assets being moved through the pipeline. Maya felt cold anger rising within her. This wasn't just corruption. It was a perversion of everything she had once sworn to uphold. Federal agents using criminal organizations to conduct unsanctioned operations on American soil trafficking, human beings under the guise of national security. "We've seen enough," she decided. "We need to get this evidence to Anderson coordinate a response before they're fully operational." As they prepared to retreat, Maya's gaze fell on a separate area of the cavern partially concealed behind plastic sheeting. Something about the configuration of equipment there struck her as odd, inconsistent with either drug production or human trafficking operations. "Wait," she whispered, focusing on this anomaly. "What's that section?" Morris followed her gaze, frowning, as he adjusted the camera for a better view. "Looks like... Christ, that's a field surgery suite. Portable operating table, medical supplies, refrigeration units." The pieces clicked together in Maya's mind with horrifying clarity. They're not just moving people through here. They're harvesting organs. The refrigeration, the surgical equipment, it's for extracting and preserving organs for transport. Morris's expression hardened. "Black market organ trafficking, worth millions per donor. Explains the high security, the sophisticated setup." He continued documenting, ensuring every aspect of the operation was captured. "This goes beyond even what I suspected. Crane isn't just running unsanctioned operations, he's profiting personally from human suffering on an industrial scale." A shadow fell across them as they crouched in the tunnel entrance. Maya sensed the presence behind them a fraction of a second too late. "I wondered when you'd find your way here, Agent Reeves." They turned to find Howard Chen standing behind them, shoulder bandaged but gun steady in his hand. Blood had dried on the side of his face, giving him a macabre appearance in the dim light. "Chen." Maya kept her voice level, mind racing through options. Their position offered no cover, no escape route other than past Chen or into the main cavern where Crane waited. Came to see what you're really involved in organ harvesting from unwilling donors. Necessary evils in an imperfect world. Chen's expression remained impassive. The subjects are already condemned men and women. Terrorists, cartel members, enemies of the state. Their organs save American lives. Politicians, military leaders, intelligence assets. The greater good. There's nothing good about this, Maya countered, disgust evident in her voice. You've become everything we once swore to fight against. Chen's smile never reached his eyes. Your naivety was always your weakness, Reeves. The world doesn't operate according to the rules they taught us at Quantico. Power creates its own morality. He gestured with his weapon. Inside. The assistant director will want to speak with you personally before the end. Morris tensed beside Maya, clearly calculating whether they could overpower Chen before he fired. Maya subtly shook her head. Even if they succeeded, the gunshot would alert the entire operation in the main cavern. Fine, she conceded, rising slowly with hands visible. Let's have that conversation. Chen marched them into the main cavern at gunpoint, the activity within faltering as heads turned to observe their entrance. Crane looked up from his conversation with Blackwood, surprise flickering across his features before being replaced by cold calculation. Agent Reeves and Agent Morris, the DEA's most persistent internal affairs investigator. Crane stepped forward, impeccably dressed as always, not a hair out of place, even in this subterranean setting. I wish I could say this was unexpected, but you've both proven remarkably difficult to deter over the years. Maya met his gaze directly, refusing to show fear. It's over, Crane. We've documented everything. The operation, the organ harvesting, the Black Spades connection. Evidence is already uploading to secure servers. And if Crane was concerned, he concealed it masterfully. An impressive bluff, but we've been jamming all transmissions within a 5-mile radius since establishing this forward operating base. He glanced at the camera Morris still held. Nothing has left this cave system. Nothing will. Sheriff Anderson knows we're here, Maya countered. He's mobilized local law enforcement. They'll be coming for us. Crane's laugh held genuine amusement. Local deputies against federal tactical teams, please. He gestured around the cavern. By this time tomorrow, this operation will be fully functional. 1 week from now, the first shipments move through the pipeline, and you two will be tragic victims of the territorial dispute between rival motorcycle gangs that left 7 dead in rural Montana. The clinical detachment with which he outlined their murder sent chills down Maya's spine. This man had been her superior, someone she had once respected, now revealed as a monster who trafficked in human lives for profit and power. Why Pine Ridge? She asked, partly to keep him talking, while she assessed potential escape routes or weapons within reach. Why here? Why now? Geography, isolation, minimal law enforcement presence. Crane shrugged slightly. And, of course, Mrs. Holloway's remarkable cave system with its Cold War-era access tunnels, perfect infrastructure for our needs, just waiting to be utilized. His gaze hardened. I didn't expect to find you here, Reeves. That was unfortunate for both of us. You arranged the ambush 5 years ago, Maya stated, certainty replacing long-held suspicion. Had my team killed to protect your connection to the Spades. Your team was getting too close to operations that extended far beyond your clearance level. Crane showed no remorse, only mild irritation at past complications. It wasn't personal, just necessary maintenance of operational security. Maya felt cold fury rising within her. You murdered federal agents, your own people. Collateral damage in service to higher priorities. Crane checked his watch with the casual indifference of a man discussing a business meeting rather than multiple murders. as you and Agent Morris will soon be. Sir, one of the tactical operators approached, addressing Crane with military formality. Perimeter sensors are reporting multiple individuals approaching through the north and east tunnels. Not our people. Crane frowned, the first sign of genuine concern crossing his features. How many? At least 15 distinct signatures, moving with tactical formation. Maya felt a surge of hope. Anderson. The sheriff had mobilized faster than expected, approaching through multiple access points to surround the operation. Secure the primary access routes, Crane ordered. Use whatever force necessary to repel unauthorized entry. This operation proceeds on schedule. As the tactical team moved to defensive positions, Maya caught Morris's eye, a silent communication passing between them. The diversion created by Anderson's approach might provide their only opportunity to act. Crane turned back to them, irritation evident in his expression. It seems Sheriff Anderson is more resourceful than anticipated. Unfortunately, this accelerates our timetable for resolving your situation. He nodded to Chen. Take them to the South Passage. Make it look convincing, multiple shots, signs of crossfire. Then rejoin the defensive positions. Chen gestured with his weapon. Move. South Tunnel. Maya and Morris were forced forward, away from the main cavern, toward a smaller passage that presumably led to another exit from the cave system. Behind them, the sounds of preparation echoed as Crane's team established defensive positions against Anderson's approaching force. The South Passage narrowed considerably, the ceiling dropping until they were forced to proceed in single file. Chen following close behind with his weapon trained on their backs. The artificial lighting from the main cavern faded, replaced by the weak beam of Chen's tactical flashlight. Keep moving, Chen ordered, when Maya slowed slightly, attempting to create distance between them. You don't have to do this, Chen. She tried searching for any humanity that might remain in her former colleague. There's still a way out. Testify against Crane, expose the operation, and spend the rest of my life in federal prison. Chen's voice held no hesitation. I've made my choices, Reeves, just as you made yours 5 years ago when you ran instead of joining us. Ahead, Morris paused at a junction where the passage split in 2 directions. Which way? Left, Chen directed. Another 100 yards, then it opens into a small chamber, suitable for our purposes. Morris nodded, then stumbled, suddenly falling to one knee with a grunt of pain. Damn it! Twisted my ankle on these rocks. Chen approached cautiously, weapon still raised. Get up, no delays. As Chen drew within striking distance, Morris exploded into action, driving upward and backward in a precise movement that caught the corrupt agent by surprise. His shoulder connected with Chen's midsection, driving him back against the cave wall, as Maya spun to assist. Chen recovered quickly, bringing his weapon to bear, but Maya's hand closed around his wrist, forcing the gun upward as it discharged. The shot echoed deafeningly in the confined space rock fragments, raining down as the bullet struck the ceiling. Morris delivered a precise strike to Chen's wounded shoulder, drawing a howl of pain as the agent's grip on his weapon faltered. Maya completed the disarm with a twisting motion that sent the gun clattering into the darkness of the passage. Chen fought with the desperation of a man who knew the consequences of failure, landing a solid blow to Maya's ribs that sent her stumbling backward. Morris pressed the attack, his movements efficient and brutal. The training of a federal agent combined with the resolve of a man fighting for his life. A sickening crack echoed through the passage as Morris's strike connected with Chen's jaw, sending the corrupt agent crashing to the ground. He lay motionless, blood trickling from his mouth, in the beam of the fallen flashlight. Maya recovered Chen's weapon, checking that he was unconscious but alive. "We need to move. That shot will bring Crane's team." Morris nodded, retrieving the flashlight. This passage eventually connects to the East Access Tunnel. If Anderson's people are approaching from that direction, we might intercept them before Crane's team locks down the entire system. They moved swiftly through the narrow passage, leaving Chen's unconscious form behind as they navigated the twisting path through the limestone. The sounds of their pursuers faded, replaced by an ominous silence broken only by the drip of water from ancient formations. After several minutes of cautious progress, Maya detected a new sound ahead, the faint murmur of voices approaching from the opposite direction. She signaled Morris to halt, both raising their weapons as flashlight beams became visible around the next bend in the passage. "Federal agents!" Maya called out, identifying herself before a tragic friendly fire incident could occur. "Identify yourselves, Sheriff Tom Anderson, Pine Ridge County," came the immediate response. "That you, Maya?" Relief flooded through her as Anderson appeared around the corner, shotgun in hand, followed by Deputy Harmon and what appeared to be a dozen local men armed with hunting rifles and shotguns. "Sheriff?" Maya lowered her weapon. "You've got perfect timing." Anderson nodded grimly, taking in their battered appearance. "Figured you might need backup when we detected a major communications blackout centered on this area. Got every able-bodied man in the county who knows how to handle a weapon." He gestured to the former military men among the group. "Even got some with tactical experience." Maya quickly explained the situation: Crane's operation, the Black Spade's involvement, the organ trafficking, and the defensive positions being established in the main cavern. "How many we looking at?" Anderson asked the experienced law enforcement officer, rapidly assessing the threat. "At least 15 tactical operators," Morris supplied. "Plus Blackwood and several Spades members. Heavy weapons, body armor, military training." Anderson absorbed this with a grim nod. "Outnumbered, but we've got home field advantage and surprise. Mez?" Holloway provided detailed maps of the cave system. There's a natural gallery overlooking the main cavern. Perfect position for covering fire. Maya felt a surge of admiration for the sheriff's tactical thinking. "If we can secure that position, we can force Crane to surrender rather than risk a firefight he can't win." "That's the plan." Anderson turned to his assembled force. "Harmon, take 5 men and approach from the West Passage. Provide diversion when you receive my signal. Jensen, you and your boys secure the south exit. Prevent any escape attempts. Morris, you and Maya come with me to the overlook position." The local force dispersed with quiet efficiency, these men who had hunted these mountains for decades, moving through the darkness with the confidence of those on familiar ground. Anderson led Maya and Morris through a side passage that gradually ascended, eventually opening onto a natural stone shelf that indeed provided a perfect vantage point over the main cavern nearly 30 feet below. From this position, they could see Crane directing his tactical team to defensive positions covering the main entrances. The Black Spades members clustered near the communications equipment Blackwood in animated conversation with one of Crane's operators. "Perfect," Anderson whispered, signaling his men to spread out along the ledge. "We've got clear shots at every target in the room." Maya positioned herself at the center of the formation, Chen's confiscated weapon trained on Crane himself. Morris activated his camera again, documenting the scene from this advantageous angle. Anderson produced a radio, presumably operating on a frequency not affected by Crane's jamming equipment. "All units in position. Prepare to execute on my mark." Acknowledgements came from Harmon and Jensen, confirming their teams were ready. Anderson nodded to Maya, then raised a bullhorn he'd carried in his pack. "Assistant Director Crane." His voice boomed through the cavern, magnified by the natural acoustics of the limestone chamber. This is Sheriff Tom Anderson. Your position is surrounded. Surrender your weapons and order your men to stand down." The effect was instantaneous. Crane's head snapped up toward their position, shock evident even from a distance. His tactical team scrambled for cover, weapons raised toward the unexpected threat from above. "You are outnumbered and outpositioned," Anderson continued as his men made themselves visible along the ledge, weapons trained on the operators below. "Any aggressive action will be met with immediate lethal response." Crane recovered quickly, his voice carrying clearly through the cavern. "Sheriff Anderson, you're interfering with a federal operation. Stand down immediately or face arrest for obstruction of justice. No federal operation authorizes organ trafficking or collaboration with criminal organizations on American soil." Maya called down, her voice echoing off the limestone walls. "We have documented evidence of your entire operation, Crane. It's over." Uncertainty rippled through the tactical team as they processed this exchange. These men had been told they were conducting a legitimate, if classified, operation. The accusation of organ trafficking clearly came as an unwelcome revelation to at least some of them. Crane recognized the wavering loyalty and moved quickly to regain control. "Maintain positions. This is a legitimate national security operation. These local officers have no jurisdiction or authority here." "Last warning," Anderson announced. "Weapons down in 10 seconds, or we open fire." The tension in the cavern reached breaking point as the countdown began. Maya kept her weapon trained on Crane, who stood with the unnatural stillness of a predator calculating options. At 5 seconds, one of the tactical operators slowly lowered his weapon, stepping away from his position. Another followed, then 2 more. "What are you doing?" Crane demanded, fury distorting his features. "Return to your positions immediately." Blackwood and his Spades members, sensing the changing tide, began edging toward the nearest exit. Anderson noticed immediately. "Jensen South Passage. Targets attempting to flee." Through their radios came Jensen's calm response. "South Passage secured. No one's getting through." Trapped and increasingly isolated, as more operators laid down their weapons, Crane made his desperate move. In one fluid motion, he drew a concealed handgun and fired toward the ledge where Maya stood exposed. The shot went wide, ricocheting off limestone as Maya dove for cover. Anderson's men returned fire immediately, a coordinated volley that forced Crane and his remaining loyal operators to retreat behind equipment and supply crates. "Harmon, execute," Anderson commanded into his radio. From the West Passage, Deputy Harmon and his team emerged, catching Crane's group in a devastating crossfire. Pinned between Anderson's position above and Harmon's flanking maneuver, the outcome was inevitable. Within minutes, the remaining resistance collapsed. Crane himself was the last to surrender, emerging from behind a communications console with hands raised, blood streaming from a graze along his temple. "You have no idea what you've done," he spat, as Anderson's men secured the cavern, disarming and zip-tying the tactical operators and Black Spades members. "The people I answer to won't let this stand." Maya approached her former supervisor, feeling nothing but contempt for the man who had betrayed everything their badge represented. "Document everything," she instructed Morris, who continued recording methodically. "Every piece of equipment, every operator, every word Crane says. This all goes public. No classified designations, no buried reports." "You can't expose this," Crane hissed, desperation replacing his usual control. "The diplomatic implications alone." "Should have thought of that before you started trafficking human organs on American soil." Anderson interrupted, securing Crane's restraints personally. Using my county as your base of operations was your first mistake. Threatening Mrs. Holloway was your last. As Crane was led away with the other captives, Maya surveyed the cavern, the sophisticated equipment, the surgical suite, the holding cells, all evidence of an operation that had nearly succeeded in establishing itself in the heart of her adopted community. Morris approached camera, still documenting every detail. It's done. Uploaded to multiple secure servers the moment we regained signal strength. CNN Washington Post oversight committees. Everyone gets copies. No way to bury this now. Maya nodded, a complex mix of emotions washing over her. Relief that the immediate threat had ended. Satisfaction that Crane would face justice. But also uncertainty about what came next for Pine Ridge and for herself. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. "To me, my identity is completely compromised." Morris considered this, tucking the camera away now that its work was complete. Witness protection would be the standard protocol. New identity, new location, start over again. The thought of leaving Pine Ridge, the community that had become her home, the people who had stood with her despite the danger she had brought to their door, struck Maya with unexpected force. "I'm not running again," she decided. "Whatever comes next, I face it here." 3 months later, Maya sat on her cabin porch, watching as golden afternoon light spilled across the Montana mountains. The air carried the first hints of autumn aspen leaves, beginning their transformation from green to gold across the distant slopes. The fallout from what the media had dubbed the Pine Ridge Conspiracy continued to reverberate through federal law enforcement agencies. Congressional hearings, criminal indictments, internal investigations that had already reached assistant director level in 3 agencies. Victor Crane faced multiple life sentences for crimes ranging from conspiracy to murder federal agents to human trafficking. Ray Blackwood and 17 Black Spades members had pleaded guilty to reduced charges in exchange for testimony against higher-level conspirators. Howard Chen recovered from his injuries, turned state's evidence, revealing connections that reached into the highest levels of government. The evidence Morris had documented in the caves proved irrefutable, sparking international outrage and diplomatic crises, with 3 countries implicated in the organ trafficking network. No classification could bury the truth. This time, no political pressure, silence, the investigation. Maya's own status had transformed dramatically. From fugitive to key witness, her testimony corroborating the evidence that exposed Crane's operation. The charges against her desertion, theft of classified materials obstruction, had been dropped in exchange for her cooperation. The door behind her opened as Sheriff Anderson stepped onto the porch, coffee mug in hand. In the aftermath of the cave raid, he had become something of a national figure, the small-town sheriff who brought down a corrupt federal conspiracy. Job offers had poured in from across the country, all politely declined. "Thought I might find you out here," he said, settling into the chair beside her. "Watching the mountains again." Maya smiled, accepting the mug he offered. "Best view in the county. Mrs. Holloway wants you to know her offer still stands. Property adjoining hers, 20 acres, with that ridge view she knows you like." Anderson sipped his coffee. "Says she needs a neighbor she can trust now that she's become a local celebrity." The old woman had emerged from hiding to find herself at the center of the story, the property owner who refused to sell access rights to her caves, unwittingly disrupting an international criminal conspiracy. Her interviews, delivered with characteristic bluntness and dry humor, had made her something of a folk hero. "I'll think about it," Maya promised, though she'd already decided to accept. Her current cabin held too many memories of her life in hiding, of the moment when her past had caught up with her. A fresh start while remaining in the community she'd come to love appealed deeply. That FBI offer still on the table. Anderson asked casually. Maya nodded. The Bureau, desperate to repair its tarnished image, had offered her reinstatement with full rank and back pay, a symbolic gesture of restitution for the wrongs done to her team 5 years earlier. I turned it down yesterday. She watched a hawk circling lazily above the pines. Some bridges can't be rebuilt. Anderson nodded, unsurprised. And Morris, where does he land in all this? Reassigned to head a new internal affairs division at DEA, independent oversight, direct reporting to congressional committees. Maya smiled slightly. He offered me a position. Civilian consultant. No badge, no gun, just perspective. You going to take it? Maya considered the question as she had for weeks now. The prospect of returning to law enforcement, even in a civilian capacity, stirred mixed emotions. The work had defined her once, had nearly destroyed her when it turned corrupt. Yet the skills remained, the training, the instinct to protect. Part-time, she decided aloud, the words feeling right as she spoke them. 4 days a month in Denver, the rest of my time here. Doing what? Anderson's tone was curious rather than challenging. Maya gestured toward her motorcycle parked beside the cabin, the panniers still emblazoned with the Mountain Fresh Delivery logo. Turns out, there's still a market for reliable delivery service in remote mountain communities, especially from someone the locals trust. The sheriff chuckled, raising his mug in a toast. To Pine Ridge's most overqualified delivery woman. Maya returned the gesture, a sense of peace settling over her that had been absent for years. Her past and present had collided violently, bringing danger to her adopted home. But in that collision, she had found something unexpected, redemption, purpose, and a community that stood with her when it mattered most. The mountains before her had witnessed her flight from a corrupted life, her attempt to disappear into anonymity. Now, they would witness something different, not a woman in hiding, but a woman who had found her place in the world. Not running from her past, but integrating it into a future of her own choosing. Maya Reynolds and Special Agent Maya Reeves no longer separate identities, but parts of a whole. The delivery woman who had taken down a conspiracy. The federal agent who had found home in a small Montana town. The survivor who had at last stopped running. The setting sun painted the mountains in shades of amber and gold, much as it had on that morning months ago when everything changed. But this time, as darkness approached, Maya felt no apprehension, only gratitude for the journey that had brought her here and quiet anticipation for whatever might come next. She had knocked over their whole gang, and in doing so, found her way home.